We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com. Welcome to another edition of AVRant. I'm Tom Andrew, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AVRant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. Right away, I'll say thank you to Lee Overstreet for pinch hitting last week, and welcome back, Tom. He is back. He is here. Hello.
Yeah, so last week I was out because, I don't know if you mentioned the podcast or
I
not.
did.
Somebody was coming to fix the leaking wall
Yes.
in my son's room so that we could get the carpet put in. So get the wall fixed, so we get the carpet put in, so I can get my home theater back.
Yes.
He didn't show up.
There it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then he said he was going to come on Friday, and then he showed up on Friday. And then he said he was going to come on Saturday, and he didn't show up on Saturday.
Uh-huh.
And honestly, I mean, this guy, honestly, I'm going to be, there's some people who you're like, oh, they're just flaky or whatever. This is a job that's so small for this particular tradesman. Like he's got a like a gaggle of people that he manages, and he was like, I know you guys really need this. This is really, I know that you guys have been suffering with not getting this thing fixed for a long time. I'm going to do it for you personally, but I got to fit it in my schedule. And and he's still trying to fit it in as far as I can tell. So I have no, like, this guy is so knowledgeable. Like, there's some people you meet who are like, who know things so well that you can't help but know that they know it. You know what I mean? Some people try to convince you they're smart. This guy's just like, it's just like, you just know that he's going to do the whatever. So he just can't get it done. So my wife found somebody else who's doing something. Not the same thing. Like, I know this guy took me through every step of what he was going to do, and I was like, that sounds thorough. I'm going to be honest with you. That sounds really thorough. That sounds like more than I would have expected that needed to be done. And the price was commensurate with that, and we were perfectly willing to pay with that price. She found somebody else who was like doing a quarter of that. Basically, just a patch job to get this thing finished. And but we talked to him yesterday, and he's here today. So he's out there doing it right now.
I see.
So no shade on the first guy, who I know was just wants to do it, wants to help us out, but just can't fit it in his schedule because he's got a crew of people that he's got to manage. And he was trying to put this job in and do it personally, which I'm sure he would have done a great job. He just isn't capable of getting it done in a timely manner, which is fine. So this other guy's doing it. Hopefully by this time next week, we will have the wall patched, and then the carpet scheduled.
Oh, okay.
If I have, that's my I think realistic hope for this. We will see. So this guy is patching the wall, and then we have to wait for everything to dry because it's mortar.
Yes.
It's brick stuff. And then we'll spray it down with water, and if it doesn't leak, he's done. If it does leak, well, then we'll have to figure that out.
Technically, I guess that meant you could have been here last week, but we had no way of knowing that, and I didn't get the topic list done until later in the day anyway, because I had already planned to record with Lee, and Lee and I record at a later hour than Tom and I record. So yes, that was all that.
I could have been here. I could have told you that. But I was still hopeful that he was going to show up.
Of course.
And he did not.
Yeah.
So it was what it was. And then Tuesday night, I started feeling bad. Got a little something going on. But I had a big morning Wednesday morning. You have like a big meeting or something. In this case, it was a training session that I was doing in town, a corporate training thing. And I went out to do that training thing and, felt fine through it. Okay. But then the adrenaline wore off from having to do that big meeting. And I was like, I don't feel good. By Wednesday afternoon, I was like, I feel like crap. I think I'm getting sick. Yep. And then I was like, well, sometimes you feel like you're getting sick, and then you just kind of power through. Yep. Just power through.
Or you figure this will be, 2-3 days, and I won't necessarily feel 100%, but I'll feel better.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'll be okay. I'll just take it easy at work. I won't, text myself. I won't
Right.
stress myself. But I'll still go to work, and I'll, just bring some Kleenex with me. I'll be fine.
Yep.
So I went to work on Thursday. By Thursday evening, I was like, yeah, I'm done. I'm going to go home and go to bed. Like, I felt so bad. Like, I haven't had a cold. I mean, I associate flus with, like, throwing up or something like that. This was just... I didn't have a fever. I just felt gross, and there was snot constantly dropping from my face.
Oh, yeah, that's the fun part.
So so Friday I slept all day. Saturday I got up and I was like, I'm going to go into the bike shop to help out because they had this event this weekend, and I knew they were going to be short-handed. And so I got up at like 8 o'clock. I got dressed. I took a shower. I got dressed. I'm like, I'm just going to lie down for a second. I slept all day.
Perfect.
Never showed up.
Oh, man.
Didn't really start feeling better until Monday morning.
Okay.
I mean, it was bad. And I still am congested, but I am so much better.
Oh, that's
good. But
good.
there is a chance, not a small one, that you're going to hear me blow my nose many, many times throughout this podcast.
And the same is true of me. Folks who listened last week know that I was feeling quite under the weather there last week, and I told Lee and the listening audience that I was on the upswing. Well, that kind of reversed course there after we finished recording last week. Mine was a flu. Mine was pretty certainly a flu. Fever that just wouldn't really completely go away for 4 or 5 days there. It just hung around and hung around. Not high fever, but like
just high enough to make you feel like crap. I hate those.
Well, and like for me to kind of shiver when I get into bed is not normal for me at all. I always run on the warm side, just feeling warm. So for me to feel shivery when it wasn't even below 0 degrees here, it definitely an indication that my body temperature was a little too high. And then the gastrointestinal side of things decided to show up there last week. And so, it was, I'm pretty sure, a flu. Now, I'm still battling it a little bit, so I might also be blowing my nose or clearing my throat or whatever again this week. So you got a couple of sicky hosts over here. That's what's going on.
The sick cast.
Couple of sick boys. That's what's happening. So, but
let's do a real quick review.
Yes.
I just reviewed on AV Gadgets the SOUNDPEATS Space headphones. I don't understand why these people cannot come up with names that are unique. This is not the first headphone that I reviewed that has the name Space.
Called Space, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so it irritates me that they can't come up with something.
But this is
so these are over-ear headphones. You'll see them on the SOUNDPEATS. You will see them on the YouTube.
Okay,
which we'll give you the links later. But these are wireless. I mean, you can do them wired, but these are wireless headphones. They're over ear. They're on the small side. I mean, if you got really big ears, they might not be over ear for you, but I think that they're over ear. They're meant to be over ear headphones. Their claim to fame is with normal listening volume and the ANC off.
Okay.
Or the active noise canceling off.
Okay.
You can get 123 hours.
All right.
And you're like, that's ludicrous. It is ludicrous how long these batteries last. Okay. I cannot tell you how stupidly long this battery. I have not charged these headphones, and it does not, like, I plug them in, I turn them on, I connect them to my phone, and it's like, you're at 99. Like, are you kidding me? Are you still? Like, we haven't gone down at all? The lowest I saw them was 97. I had them at 97%. This was after listening to them all day. During the review, after the review, I actually took them into the bike shop. I was wearing them at the bike shop. Mm-hmm. Did all these other things with them. Did all this stuff with them on. Listened to them all night while I was cooking, while I was drowning out the kids, everything else. I got them down to 97%. I turned them off. I turned them off. I turned them on the next day. It's at 100 again.
Right,
what did you do? I didn't charge them. They just sat there, right?
So
and now I can't get them down to 97 again. Like, it's still, I have not charged them. They just sit there. Right? So the amount of battery life you get out of these things is the thing that's crazy is you think about, like, okay, I want to make sure I have headphones that I can last through this plane ride.
Yeah, that's right.
These headphones last for the vacation.
Okay.
Like,
right.
You don't.
If you forgot the
charge
charger.
them before you leave a house, and then you charge them when you get home 2 weeks later. This is how long these headphones last.
Wow.
And you're like, okay, well that's cool, but they must suck in other ways.
I just wanted before we get off the battery topic, if you do turn the noise cancellation on,
61, I think, hours.
So why did they bother with the other spec? Because if you can claim like 50, 60 hours with the noise cancellation on, why bother claiming what it is with it off?
I wouldn't. Well, because actually the noise canceling is like the worst part of these things, to be honest with you. The noise canceling is okay. It's okay. So if you've ever had active noise canceling on headphones, and I was going to save this for a little bit later, but you brought it up. So active noise canceling can be, it's always okay. It's never super terrible. Occasionally you'll get some that's like really, really bad. These are basically like the droning noises. They have no problems with that. That's the easy part. The problem with these headphones is like high noises that are coming from outside.
High-pitched sounds.
High-pitched noises tend to get accentuated by the active noise canceling. So you get like these... It makes like voices and stuff outside you sound robotic as it's trying to cancel them out, and it kind of piercing. So the noise canceling, I would never. I'll be honest with you, I probably never turn it on
unless it's just a constant droning sound. So I mean, for the plane ride, maybe you do turn it on.
Maybe you do, and it would be fine for that. But I don't think this is something you're going to be sitting in an office with people around you talking and you turn the noise canceling on. They're already closed back, so who cares? You know what I mean? The passive noise canceling is good enough, in my opinion, for that. But sound quality wise, little bass forward, not much. Little bass forward. They have an EQ that you can adjust. I like the app. It's clunky in some ways, but the thing that I like about it is that it knows what headphones you're wearing. And you're like, Tom, that's stupid. Every app I've got, I've got many, for these Bluetooth headphones that are out there, they give you a menu that makes you select, that tells you what headphones are connected and makes you select them. As if there were, so if there's more than one, right? But how many times are there more than one? I mean, I use these things all the time, and there's almost never more than one, that I might be connecting to at any given moment. So, these, you open the app, and the app's like, oh, you got these headphones on? Oh, boom, and you're gone. And it doesn't care, it does it automatically, which I really like. As for there's an EQ which you can adjust and it does something. I mean, clearly you can hear the difference. There's manual. There's an adaptive one, which is stupid. I kind of go through it in the review. It's like I don't really know that this is doing anything for you that you couldn't do yourself. I don't know that I would use it. It's like an automatic EQ where it puts you through a hearing test, but there's a visual. Yeah, there's a visual indication that it's changed the frequency or the volume. So it's like, am I hearing it, or am I think I'm hearing it because I know it's changed because I can see it on my phone that it's changed. So I don't really love that. I just kept them in flat. I put them in manual EQ, kept it flat. I thought they sounded great. Quality-wise, as far as heft and sturdiness, they're really, I have quite a few Bluetooth headphones that are like this style, like the over-ear style, that just feel flimsy. And these feel very robust, and I have a lot more confidence in their ability to withstand abuse and to last longer than a lot of other headphones. The downside and the other than the ANC, which like I said, I wasn't super impressed with, the downside of these is that they don't really, like, this is as small as they get. Like, they don't get any small.
So Tom is showing this on the YouTube video if you want to come see it there. These are the type where the headband stays in its arc shape, and then the ear cups can just kind of collapse into the curve of the headband, but that's it. They don't fold fully in half or something like that. Right.
And they, you would, for a headphone that is clearly with a battery life like this, that's clearly meant to travel, you would think that they would get smaller and they would have a case.
They don't come with a
bag.
Case?
They have nothing.
Interesting.
They don't come with anything, which I found odd. But they're so cheap.
Well, there we go. What sort of price point are we looking at with these?
The MSRP is like $90 on these things.
$90, like $89.99 type of price?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. And they go on sale for like $50 from time to time.
How did they get a battery that lasts that
long?
I don't know.
That's what I'm saying. So for this price point, and like the battery life is stupid.
Yeah.
Like it's stupid.
That's wild.
And so just say you do manage to kill them.
Sure.
Like somehow.
Well, eventually it is
I
a
don't
battery.
know. I mean, it's a battery, right? You're like, I have been charged these things in 2 months, right? Like a 10-minute charge gives you like 12 hours.
Oh, wow. I mean, I wonder if it's a thing if it stays there at the 199.98 and then, rapidly drops down to 17 at some point or something.
Maybe, I don't know, but
you haven't had a chance to wear them long enough to find out.
I wear them a bunch, and
Okay.
it's just it's crazy. But yeah, so I mean, for the price point,
yeah,
I just can't. I just can't. They're almost disposable. I'll be honest with you. I mean, $90 is not no money. But
like if you're just like, I need durable headphones with a crazy long battery life that if I do end up losing them, I'm not like really that upset.
Yeah.
Fits the bill.
I mean, and they sound good.
And they sound decent enough. Okay, yeah.
They're like, oh, the ANC's not that great. Who cares? Shut up. They're $90. You charged them once the entire time you own them. Well, I mean.
Yeah, that's wild.
So they're good-looking headphones too. I mean, there's a lot of stuff, and there's physical buttons. There's not that capacitive touch crap. That as much as I like the idea.
Yeah, even if somebody's like,
capacitive
that's a cost-saving measure, I'm like, that's also a not bad feature to just have physical buttons I can push. I don't mind that at all.
I mean, and the control scheme is almost exactly what you'd expect. It's just an overall really quite good product.
So these are
I'm Bluetooth, and there's a wire that you can connect.
Okay, optional
so
wire.
Bluetooth 5.3, I guess, is the one that they're going with. It's not it's not low energy mode. You don't have to have a LE.
It's not LE. Okay.
No, it's just regular Bluetooth.
Does it have aptX? Is that on board?
It's not.
I wouldn't expect that at this price point, so that's all right.
No, it's none of that stuff. But still, I mean, people are like, oh, it's got to be. You're connecting to Pandora. Shut up. You know what I mean? You got Spotify on there. You're not streaming, high quality anything, and even if you were, who cares? You didn't charge your headphones for 3 weeks, so whatever. I think they're great, and I recommend them.
What about like for giving them to a kid? Where would they fall on that?
Yeah,
scale?
I think so too. Yeah, like I said, $90. I mean, I hate to break it to you. I have reviewed kid specific headphones that are more expensive than these.
Absolutely.
And their big claim to fame is that they're a little bit smaller and they volume limit.
That's the main thing.
Can
you maybe set something like that in the app? Is there maybe a volume limit or something?
App's not that smart. Okay. But that's that, like I said, the app is the thing I like about the app is it's a little bit more user friendly as far as turning it on and getting it set up. But the other thing is that it has the ANC button, and the ANC button that's all it does. It just flicks between the three. Like every other button has like 17 different things it can do. The ANC button's like flick between the three modes, the transparency, the normal, and the ANC. And then whoever they had record the voice, did they put them in an empty gymnasium when they recorded it?
Interesting.
I think so. Because it is like the echoiest thing. And they're the voice, I don't know why they do this, but the voice person that they have do these things is constantly like on the surprised side that they're saying these things. They're like, ANC on. You're like, what? Am I supposed to be like, why are you so excited about this? So but it's like echoey and kind of surprised and a little bit more energetic than you think. You're just like, I just need the information, lady. I don't need you to be this, like, you're not selling me on it.
Right.
So it's quite funny.
No kidding.
The way that the voices are. And every once in a while they'll have like they usually have a female voice, and this one does. Mm-hmm. But there are headphones that have a male voice, and the male voices are always way too serious. You're like, okay, listen, all right, this is not like a trailer from the next X-Men movie. Settle down, man. ANC on. You're like, jeez, like I didn't even know this headphones could play that low. So yeah, overall, highly recommend.
Okay,
check them out. I mean, the battery life, and like I said, they really do last a long time. Like, I mean, I have, and I don't think they have like an automatic turn-off function either. I didn't mention this in the review, but I don't think they have an automatic turn-off function because I've left them on and put them to the side and then come back like, a half an hour later and they're still on over there connected to my phone. And my phone's not doing anything, so I don't know why. So a lot of times if it doesn't get a signal, it'll just shut down.
Yeah.
But these things don't, and it's still. I mean, I could actually go turn them on right now and figure out what the percentage is, but it's kind of crazy.
All right, so once again, that was the SOUNDPEATS Space wireless.
Check it out at avgadgets.com.
avgadgets.com. Tom has written up a full review, so yeah, there we go. Interesting.
It's just $90.
$90
for like legitimately weeks of battery.
Right.
If that was it. If like they're like, they kind of
this isn't going to be a 24-hour rundown test of the battery.
I mean, I'm like, how am I supposed to test this?
Yeah.
Just leave them. I gotta have them connected to something. So they're gonna be connected to my phone for 120.
Yeah, your phone is going to die before the headphones do. That seems guaranteed.
During the test, my phone was like down to below 50%, and the headphones were still at 100. I'm like, you're killing me. All right, Rob, what did you watch?
Yeah, so this week I rewatched Tenet. I decided to go ahead and redo that. I had seen it way back when it first came out, and was sort of in the mood to rewatch that one. So on second rewatch, I mean, I paid a little bit more attention to, I had noted it when watching it the first time, like what they were doing with the score, and making sure that any time that the people were inverted and moving themselves backwards through time, that the score, of course, was playing backwards, and you had that telltale sound of like playing a recording in reverse and that. But that's right. I paid a little bit more attention to that, and like trying to figure out whether they had purposely composed the music to also sound good playing backward, which I don't know if, like obviously some thought would have been put into that, but it had to be something where you could tell it was playing backwards. Because like if they had gone to the extent of composing music that sounded good forwards and backwards and you couldn't really tell it was playing backward, then you would have lost the effect that they were going for. So I'm not, I don't know the answer to that. Maybe there's a behind the scenes special somewhere that explains that. But that was sort of the thing I was paying the most attention to. But I just wanted to rewatch it because I'd only seen it the once before, and I wouldn't have said it was my favorite Christopher Nolan movie back then. And it certainly did have the thing where, there were a lot of times where the score or the background sounds were so dramatically louder than the dialogue that you were struggling to make out what people were saying, in addition to them quite often having something covering their face.
I watched that movie on a plane, if I remember correctly.
That is not the environment. On second watch, even though, I had a bit more knowing what to expect and knowing what to follow through and, piecing the timeline stuff together as it's, moving forward and backward and everything like that, I was like, this still is not my favorite Christopher Nolan movie. So the main criticism I have of it is they do eventually say what the stakes are, like why it's so dangerous that someone in the future has figured out how to make people and objects move backward through time. They do eventually, but it takes so long to get to what are the stakes of this movie. Like, there had to be some way much earlier in the movie to give you some inclination of why this is dangerous, like why this is a thing that we have to kill people to prevent, that we have to go through all of the events that the main characters go through. It's like, but why? And we don't really hear why until way deep into the movie. And then when you do eventually hear why, it's like, because there's one guy who has figured out how to like weaponize this technology. There's one man in the entire future world, and like none of it really added up, right? Just on the basics of a plot level, just a telling a story level. It's like it didn't work, and it doesn't necessarily work as a metaphor either. So there's something.
So if you take that and you compare it to what's the other movie with Guy Pearce in it? The one I'm thinking of,
Memento.
Memento, yeah.
Okay.
Where the stakes are like he wakes up and he looks down at his at his body and he realizes things are weird and going, he doesn't remember things and things are going on. And then the stakes are immediately there. You know, he is trying to find the person who killed his wife or whatever.
Right. Right.
And there's immediate stakes.
And we are in.
And you're in there.
And you're like,
right?
You're with him on this journey. Yes.
Like, he's confused and you're confused.
Sure.
Right? And then you're like, okay, we're in this together. We're going to figure it out together.
That's right.
As opposed to Tenet, where it's like, and I think this happens too often with authors and artists and stuff like that. And is that at some point they're like, I get it. I know it's coming, and I think that they're going to trust me. The audience is. There's
definitely a lot of that. Like Nolan, quite often the idea, the concept behind it is perhaps more interesting than the actual telling of the story.
Yes.
But I think Tenet is more guilty of that than any of his other movies, because I mean, the idea is really clever. I don't think the execution fully pulls it off, even on second watch. Like, the notion of getting into a fist fight with someone who is moving backward through time is like, that's a really cool idea. And there are some cool visuals, but not quite enough. Like, somehow it doesn't translate really well. Like, there's the bit of you as the audience member who's going, okay, what am I watching here? And it is intriguing. And then, like, you understand what it is you're seeing, so then you're starting to see some of the weird backward movement that's going on with the person that they're fist fighting with. And when they get to the sort of chase scene, the car chase scene, and there's a car that's moving backward through time, and like, you see it in the forward motion. And it actually looks cooler that way when you get to the explanation on the other side of the person moving backward through time, and you see it from their point of view. I'm like, I was thinking about that afterwards. I'm like, you know what? That doesn't fully make sense, because the whole idea is that to the person moving backward through time, they're experiencing time moving forward, but the whole world is going backward for that person who's been inverted, and now they're the one moving backward, which means that they have to think about, I was over there, and like basically put the car in reverse.
Yes.
Because I was over there in the normal flow of time. So if that's where I want to go, I have to go in reverse from where I am to where I was. And they have to be thinking that and doing that. It's like, nope, he just put that car in forward and drove. Like, as far as
the idea was, if you touch something, it also goes in reverse with you, though.
Nope. Nope. Things are going in the flow of time. At least the way that they explained it, they're going in the flow of time. You have to change your mindset so that if you're going normally in time and you come in contact with an inverted object, you have to think, I dropped that object in order to pick it up. And when you're going backward in time and the rest of the world is going forward, you have to think, I was over there in order to go there. Like that. That's fine.
The thing that always kind of threw me is like, I seem to remember, like I said, I think I watched it on the plane.
Yeah.
That guns would like jump into his hand.
Yes,
he'd,
because he had to think
like,
that I dropped that gun and now it comes back into my hand. Yes.
Yeah.
That was fine. That was all explained, but it just visually somehow it didn't all come together. It just didn't quite all come together. It was honestly, there needed to be some like slow-mo moments in this movie. Like just from having the audience come along and actually making the moment as cool as it is in concept. In execution, like I don't know, maybe Nolan had a bit too much trust in the audience, but he also literally had a character at one point say, "Don't think too hard about it." Like, they just said that in dialogue, which was very clearly they could have looked straight into the camera and said that to the audience. So yeah. This is one I don't think it fully pulled off. I don't think that the people who scored this lower out of Christopher Nolan's library of movies that he's done. I think that's correct. Cooler in concept than execution.
So some movies, and I think Memento is one of them, the more times you watch it, kind of the better it gets.
Right.
You know, and you could say that from the person, you know, like Princess Bride is another one, right?
Sure.
You loved it the first time, and you loved it even more the 10th time.
Right.
Yeah, it just keeps getting better. That one because of how endearing the characters are and how well the story is laid out, and just some of the little quips and stuff that happen. But with Memento and some of these other movies, the more you watch them, the more you kind of understand what's happening. Like, I still can't fully tell you. Like, every time I try to explain the story of Memento to somebody, I'm like, nah, I got.
It's not
nothing.
that complex a story, which is why it's so brilliant. Because if
It's
you
not.
do just put it in chronological order and play it in from beginning to end in chronological order, it's a small little contained story, and that's why it works so well.
So, but some movies, you watch them the first time, you're like, that was great, and then, or I think I like that, or that was pretty good. I'm not really sure how I feel about it, and then the second or third time you watch it, you're like, that was amazing. And it's just getting better. And other times you're like,
Yeah, no, Tenet didn't do it. Not for me.
Yeah.
So anyway, I want to get off of that one because that's an older movie. The other movie that I watched this week was Train to Busan. This is Korean language spoken in Korean, so we are watching subtitles. I mean, the easy log line here is zombies on a commuter train. That's
zombies
what's going
on a train, baby.
These are fast-moving, infected type zombies.
Yes.
They are not necessarily undead, because it seems like people just get infected and turn really quickly.
Yes, they do.
Not necessarily a whole waiting for them to die and then reanimate type of thing. So it's more an infected, definitely much faster speed. But this is one where I was like, okay, they thought about the ending of this movie before they started making it, and what a difference that makes. Because honestly, the majority of this movie has almost a little bit of a smirk and a lightheartedness to it, even though it's horrific and there are people dying and there's violence and all that type of stuff. The whole tone of it is a little bit lighthearted. And there's definitely like, I kind of enjoy when that person finally gets their comeuppance, like this person who was throw everybody else in front of me to protect myself. Like when they finally get theirs, you're kind of like cheering for the zombies at that point. There's all of that. But then the ending kind of hits you like a ton of bricks. Like it was really quite sad and emotional, and I'm like, they actually planned that ending before they got there for once in a horror movie. And so this is one where I think the strength of the ending enhances the overall score of the movie. This isn't one where I had to be like, it was a lot of fun until it kind of fell apart at the end, and I expected that, but I'm not going to knock too many points off for that, like I say about so many horror movies. I'm like, no, this is one where the ending, even though I don't think the end was consistent with the tone of the rest of the movie, I feel like it did elevate everything, and I would like give it a couple of extra bonus points on the score for what they pulled off there. So yeah, big thumbs up for Train to Busan. I thought that was a really worthwhile watch. Yeah.
I liked Train to Busan. I agree with what you're saying. It's a little bit more lighthearted, and there was a lot of this, like you said, people getting their comeuppance in it.
And I mean, it's certainly a commentary on the class system in South Korea and all of that type of stuff.
Which I don't fully understand anyway. So,
But I mean, there's enough there that I think you can get it. It's not like it's not like human systems across the world are that different from each other that you can't possibly understand the metaphor.
My problem with Train to Busan was that I have zombie fatigue.
Okay.
But when I watched that movie, I was like, this is a good movie.
Yes.
But I don't have to see another zombie movie for a while.
See.
Like maybe
Well, yeah, like the zombies themselves, were they doing something we've never, ever witnessed before? No. Although I did like some of the special effects that they threw in there where it's just like a literal liquid of zombies. Like they're just like flowing over each other, not even climbing over each other, just like flowing over each other. And some of those effects were really quite amusing and quite good. So yeah, I give a big thumbs up to it. I mean, yeah, if you're absolutely against anything zombies, then I guess this isn't going to be for you. But I thought the performances were strong. I thought that it tugged at the heartstrings when it needed to. I thought the little girl, the daughter in there, was like, she gave a heck of a performance. Like a very believable young child in this situation performance. So yeah, full of thumbs up there. Yeah, and I'll just mention I'm continuing on with Evil. I'm in season 2. I'm not enjoying it just on a fun level as much as season 1. It takes a darker turn for the characters. The characters are dealing with darker things on a personal level, and it doesn't have the joy that season 1 had. There was something about season 1 that was just like joyous in its exploration of evil and demonic signs and all this type of stuff. And I loved it for that because it was so gleeful in its evilness.
Man, I don't think I watched the same show as you.
Oh, I thought so. Anyway, season 2 does not have that. It does not have the same sense of glee. It's still very good. The performances are really strong. The facial expressions that lead actress is able to do. She pulls larger facial expressions than a lot of people that we watch, but she's so charming when she does it that it works really, really well. There's a episode in season 2 where they do a bit of a gimmick. They visit a monastery where they've taken a vow of silence, and everyone who visits must also be silent. And essentially the whole episode, other than a few little sneaks of whispered dialogue here and there, is a fully silent, and then they actually put in subtitles for what the person is thinking, like thought bubbles in a comic book, and I thought that was really quite fun. And then, the other thing I noticed very prominently immediately with season 2 is season 2 did move to being a streaming only show. It's on Paramount Plus, and it was not airing on CBS at all, and so they threw in some language in season 2 that either would have had to been beeped out or edited in some other way if it had been airing on CBS. So they're having a little bit of fun with that, of being able to go to the PG-13 rating and sneak in a couple of swear words here and there. They seem to be reveling in that.
All right. I finished Echo. I don't know if I've mentioned that on the podcast or not. Rob doesn't.
I don't recall it. I remember you being on season 3 the last time we talked.
If I haven't
episode 3
mentioned it, I apologize. Yeah, great. I loved it.
5 episodes. That's all it was.
Great.
Okay.
I think it was great. And maybe I do feel like I did mention it. I want to say that I did, because I said something along the lines about, like, I like the fact that it's only 5 episodes. Right?
Oh no, because we were just talking about how many episodes you had left. So
maybe
that was my reflection
Anyways,
of it.
Yeah, I think it ended well. There were some. There's things that irritate me in writing. Okay, sure. Like, I hate whenever in a book you're reading a book and they'll say he didn't know or she didn't know, but, and then they tell you they tell you something else. They had no idea that this wasn't going to work out. I'm like, don't tell me that. Like, I don't need you to tell me that. And what I hate is when you introduce in movies or TV shows or whatever a clearly game breaking or like world breaking technology, and then it immediately gets discarded. Okay. Like, you're like,
okay,
I needed it for this one scene, and now it's gone.
You're referring to.
So the Kingpin shows up, and he gets he gives Echo this
the contact lens,
yeah, so that she can the two can understand each other.
Which
right?
was, like, from what was established in Hawkeye, completely unnecessary. I'm not sure why they did that change, because he was speaking in sign language in Hawkeye, and now he was speaking in sign language
at the end of this thing.
Yeah,
he was.
I don't know what that was about. Somebody had contracted for a special effects house, and they decided they had to use them. That was a little bit strange. I didn't understand that one at all.
So they introduced this technology, and they have one conversation with it, and then she throws it away. Right. I was like, dude, if he's still wearing that little earpiece or whatever. Like, if he's talking to his men, he's going to show up. Like, you're going to be able to see him through a crowd, because you're going to see these arms waving around, right? Why aren't you still using this? Just in case.
Right.
It doesn't make sense. Yeah. Anyways, so
yeah, that whole detail didn't make a sense in any context. It was completely
I thought it was
unnecessary.
a cool technology, and I didn't mind having it. But you're right. By the end of the movie, he was signing. I'm like, okay, so he really could sign.
He could sign before and after, but not for that one episode. I don't know what happened with that. That was weird.
So, anyways, but overall, I did enjoy the series. I thought that she was an interesting character. Yes. It was for those people who are worried that the Netflix shows, which they did bring into the MCU, which are quite a bit darker and more violent and more explicit, that they're not going to that they're going to be somehow. This was kind of like a hey, we're still going to do some violent stuff,
right?
That we're going to still do some, killing people stuff, which happens, of course, in Daredevil and Jessica Jones and all that other stuff. So I am excited to see what happens going forward with the MCU.
I know. Yeah.
I am glad that we are seeing a slowdown of content being released from them, because as much we've talked about this whole idea of superhero fatigue, that people are like, superhero fatigue, whatever, blah, blah. I'm like, I don't have superhero fatigue, but I have mediocre show fatigue,
Right.
and I would like to make sure that we don't have any more of those. So a refocusing on that, and maybe this Jonathan Power, is that his name? Jonathan Powers, is that right? Jonathan Majors.
Oh, yeah. Jonathan Majors is the guy who played Kang. Is that who we're talking about?
Yeah, maybe that
Jonathan
whole
Majors.
thing, which it's clearly thrown the biggest wrench in all of the MCU.
Little bit.
Right, has forced them to go, wait a second, we need to figure out how we're going to deal with this, has slowed this whole thing down. I think the only MCU movie that's on track to be released this year is Deadpool 3.
Well,
so
I was going to mention how I'm having quite the chuckle at the fact that all the people involved in Deadpool 3, they are just leaning into it now, because they're just going out there and like tongue in cheek, because it's Ryan Reynolds and the guys who wrote Deadpool, and it's not like they're ever going to not be tongue in cheek, but they're just like, oh yeah, the reason Deadpool 3 is the only official MCU movie coming out in theaters this year is we are going to fix everything. They're just like leaning into it out there, like all the issues that you've had with what's going on with the multiverse in general and who the big bad is and why we haven't had another Avengers movie. Is like, we're going to fix it all. It's all going to be in Deadpool 3. So I'm like, that's kind of hilarious that they're just fully going for it. I don't see there's any way of that being true, which is part of the joke. But yeah, they're just like, yep. Let's just do it. People are saying you have to be the savior of the whole MCU, and we are. That's what Deadpool 3 is.
Well, I hope so. I wasn't as much of a fan of Deadpool 2 as I was of the first Deadpool.
Yeah, that's right,
and I think one of the reasons why Deadpool 1 was so good, and I've said this in many times before, is when you're on a shoestring budget,
it was so constrained.
It was when you constrain it that much,
Right.
you have to tell a good story.
That's right.
You can't just throw money at the problem until it looks good. But I've seen Free Guy, right, which is clearly had a lot of money thrown at it, I think. Lots of special effects, lots of everything else, and it still told a pretty good story.
Right.
I think it held up on second watch. Yep. I really hope that they focus on that they focus on the story. And not just the fact, hey, we got Hugh Jackman, and we're going to put in a bunch of X-Men, and we're going to try to release this.
It's pretty simple what we all want from the MCU. I don't know how they managed to go so far afield. Introduce a new team. You had it built in, right? You've got the old crew, and you've got basically all their new, younger replacement counterparts. Mm-hmm. So you use the old crew to introduce the new crew, and then you have the new crew team up. How is that complicated? That's all anybody wanted. It's like they forgot the team up part of it. They've introduced just way too many new characters who've shown up once, and then we've never seen them again. And it's just like, how did they forget the simplest of formulas? Introduce a team one at a time, and then have them team up. This is not rocket science.
Make a good movie about a character.
That's right.
And then, if the movie goes well, put that person on the team. Okay? And then have them be, and that's pretty much it. That's all you have to do.
That's all you needed to do. So, yeah, I think they'll course correct. Maybe we'll just say phases 4 and 5, we kind of forget about them a little bit, and we can go from there. That'd be fun.
I don't know. All right, let's get this podcast started finally.
Yeah, I know.
After 45 minutes or whatever it is.
That's us.
Well, we did a review. So.
We did. Of some long-lasting headphones.
I'll tell you what, they're still at 100%.
They should be.
All right, this is AVRant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. Get your questions answered. All you have to do is ask us by emailing us at question@avrant.com. Go to our website, find our episodes, show notes, and Flickr albums, so you can follow along with the pictures that we're talking about. Facebook.com/AVRant podcast, YouTube.com/AVRant, where you can see the space headphones, as well as all the pictures we're talking about, and me blowing my nose so far.
That's in there too.
Sure, Rob. I tried to go off frame. I don't know if I can.
I don't know how successful that was. I wasn't really paying attention.
I tried to lean. I was leaning. I gotta be off frame. I don't know. I don't know. All right. Contact Rob directly, rob@avrant.com. His socials is at First Reflect. I'm Tom at avrant.com. I don't do socials apparently because I'm a flat earther now.
Oh, wonderful.
Earth's flat and the government's out to get me.
Uh-huh.
Because I'm very interesting. We were talking about that at dinner the other day with the kids. I'm like, can you imagine the guy at the NSA whose job it is to watch any one of us in this house. Like,
I mean, that's what you
that
really
poor
need
person.
the AI for. And that's what's going to wake the AI up and have it decide to overthrow us. Because it's just the boredom.
This is the worst show I've ever watched.
You thought that I was an artificial intelligence and I wouldn't mind doing this 24 hours a day. Turns out that made me self-aware to the point that I want to destroy you all.
And now I realize that that humans are boring we need a different show.
Yep.
All right. Let's see here. Listeners of the week. Is that where we are?
Listeners of the week. Yeah.
All right. Become a listener of the week. To support the podcast in some way, one of the ways you can do that is going to avrant.com, click on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link, and sending in a PayPal donation. I want to thank Jeffrey for doing that this week. Jeffrey, thank you very much.
That is right, Jeffrey. Thank you for your PayPal donation. We appreciate your financial support.
If you want us to support us monthly without thinking about it, you can go to patreon.com/AVRant podcast, where you can sign up to become a monthly contributor. And we have 131 patrons currently, and Daniel is one of them. Thank you, Daniel, and all of our patrons.
That's right. Patreon.com/AVRant podcast, just like Tom said, to sign up for an automatic monthly donation. We have ticked over into a new month, so some people's credit cards expired. Ticked down a little bit there to 131 patrons at the time that we're recording this, but thank you all very much for your monthly financial support. Daniel, thank you for being one of our patrons.
Thank you. If you can't support us financially, we understand. Just support us in some way and let us know what it is, and we will mention you here. Michael has ordered some acoustic treatments from GIK, and he used their online feedback form to let them know he heard about them from us.
Thank you, Michael. Nice of you to do
Michael. And Aaron, once again, is utilizing Rob to test movie codes. So, Aaron, we will continue to provide that service for you, no charge.
That's right. Thank you, Aaron, for sending over those Canada-only movie codes. Only I can test them. I'm the only one.
And Greg and Jeff gave permissions for me to use their photos on AV Gadgets. So thank you very much, Greg, and thank you very much, Jeff. I need to go through those photos and get them uploaded.
I don't think I've even forwarded them to you yet, so that was a good reminder. But Greg and Jeff, thank you very much.
We also got notes of gratitude for keeping the podcast going through the wars and everything else that's happening. So Michael, Aaron, David from Bonnie, Scotland, which I did not say in a Scottish accent because I can't, and also I feel like it would maybe be offensive.
It is a direct quote, so I don't mind. He put it right in there himself.
Julian, who asks if either of us is getting outright summer weather in February like he is in Montana. No, because it's Florida and it's not 90 degrees and 90% humidity.
Yeah, so, I am also not getting summer weather in the Vancouver, British Columbia area. It is, like, historical tracking-wise, warmer than we normally get, but we're still in the sort of 10 to 12 degrees Celsius area. Very wet and rainy, which is very normal for us in January,
Plus,
February.
I haven't been outside in the week.
Yeah. It's not summer here, though. I don't know what's going on in Montana, but enjoy it, I guess. I don't know. Maybe summer's going to be completely inhospitable, and that would not be very fun.
And Jeff and Ryan. Ryan's a member of the 2 Hour Plus Club. So we got notes of gratitude from Michael, Aaron, David, Julian, Jeff, and Ryan. Thank you for thanking us.
And I'll say the names one more time. Michael, Aaron, David, Julian, Jeff, and Ryan. Thank you very much for your notes of gratitude and encouragement. They are definitely appreciated as Tom coughs off to the side. So thank you very much. And a big thank you to everybody who continues to listen and send in your questions.
So in the news from Emotiva speaker lineup, it's out with the old and in with the new. Emotiva has a complete new lineup of Airmotiv speakers. It's called, all the old Airmotiv models are now gone, and now it's all Airmotiv X, because why not?
Emotiva put an X in their model numbers?
Who would have guessed?
I am so shocked. Yeah. Airmotiv X. Anyway.
Just try. Guys, just try. Try to think outside of the very small box of naming conventions that you have found yourself in, and just think outside of that.
Nope. X.
Emotiva is sticking with their folded ribbon tweeters. They are mounted in a waveguide, and they can be rotated 90 degrees, so vertical and horizontal placements are both supported. Mid-range and bass woofers use woven fiber material. And while they are still black rectangles, the aesthetics have been updated with magnetic grills, covered driver mounts, and narrower front faces with radiused edges. Everything looks slimmer and sleeker. Yeah. There are 3 floor-standing models. They all come with permanently attached outrigger feet. I like outrigger feet, generally speaking, if I can get them. for those of you who don't know, that just basically means you can adjust the feet are on the on little sticks on the outside of the cabinet, so they're not on the bottom, so that if you're trying to level them, basically there's usually a knob on top that you can control to level the speaker very, very easily. It's just a quality of life thing.
Yep.
It should, I mean, it cost wise, I can't imagine it adds that much, but I think that it makes a big difference when you're trying to set up your speakers the one time you're trying to set them up. But what does end up happening is if somebody moves your speaker because they wanted to vacuum.
Yes.
Per se. So, whatever. Inevitably you're like, oh my God, they vacuumed, so I can't see where the speaker was, and now the speaker's not level, and then you're like, and getting underneath it to adjust a little nut, and that's usually on the bottom of the speaker. It's just so much easier.
It also means you definitely have to lift the speakers to move them. You don't want to try to drag them when they've got pointy feet.
There are 3 floor-standing models. They come with permanently attached outrigger feet, dual binding posts, and a large rear port. 2 rear ports on the largest model. The Airmotiv XT1, which is $1,000 a pair.
So Airmotiv X, and then T1 for Tower 1. At least the naming convention is fairly simple. $1,000 a pair.
4.5 a mid-range, and 3 5.25 bass woofers. And I guess a tweeter in there someplace.
Yes, the folded ribbon tweeter. They all share the same folded ribbon tweeter, every single model.
So the XT2, which is Tower 2, has a 5.25 mid-range and 3 6-inch woofers for some amount of money.
Oh, that's $1,300 a pair, I believe, is those ones. Yeah,
$1,300 a pair.
Sorry.
And XT3s are $2,000 a pair. 2 5.25 mid-range drivers, one above the tweeter, one below, and a deep Apolito array, plus 3 8-inch bass woofers. So more output, basically, is what you're paying for.
That's what it is.
The efficiency is in the 90 dB, 2.83 volts, 1 meter range with high power handling, but unsurprisingly, Emotiva is sticking with 4 ohm nominal impedance so that you'll feel incentivized to pair their speakers up with some beefy Emotiva amps. No one in the history of ever that has created amps has ever created a speaker next to it that didn't need that amp to power it.
Plus, it's got the dual binding posts. You're like, maybe I need 2 amplifiers per speaker. It could be. I could physically
think of how much headroom you'll have.
That's right. Got to bi-amp them.
So stupid. There's a single bookshelf model, the XB2, which is $500 a pair with dual binding posts. Double amp that one.
I know.
And a single rear port and a 6-inch driver.
It's a 2-way speaker. It's just a tweeter and a driver, but it's still got dual binding posts for some reason on a bookshelf speaker.
On a bookshelf speaker. A ribbon tweeter. Just get its own 1,000-watt.
That's right.
The wedge-shaped XA2 height speaker is only $400 a pair and uses a 5.25-inch driver with a folded ribbon tweeter underneath. So, it looks almost exactly like the SVS.
That's right. Only a single pair of binding posts on that XA1 wedge-shaped height speaker. So
no one wants to run 2
they
pairs
don't
of
expect
speaker wires.
2 pairs of speaker wires up to your
up the wall.
Ceiling-mounted or wall-mounted speaker way up high.
The most interesting designs, though, are the 3 center LCR models. Here's where the 90-degree rotatable tweeters make the most sense. The XC1, so center 1. There's 3 of these, I think.
Yeah, 3 of them total. Yep.
Just 2 more centers than you actually need, but maybe at least 1 more center than you actually need. $400 each puts a 4.5-inch mid-range driver beside the folded ribbon tweeter rather than above or below in a horizontal center configuration. On either side of the mid-range tweeter combo is a 5.25-inch bass woofer. There's a single port on the back and dual binding posts that turn the XC1 vertical and rotate the tweeter waveguide. Now you have a large stand mount speaker with the mid-range driver below the tweeter. That's weird.
It is a little bit unusual for sure.
So usually in center speakers, you see the tweeter in the center of the speaker. Sure. But this would not be.
It is not. It is a little offset to one side with its mid-range partner beside it when it's oriented horizontally as a center speaker. So yeah, it is a touch unusual. I'm not sure. Don't have measurements to look at of the dispersion to see if that
Reddit
actually
hates it, by the way.
I would think.
I can guarantee you that.
I quite like a large stand-amp mounted speaker, so orienting this thing vertically, I quite like.
Yeah, it makes more sense.
I like the looks of that. If you're going to do hiding everything behind an acoustically transparent screen where all three of your front speakers are vertical and all at the same height behind your screen or something along those lines, could work quite well for that. But yeah, a little bit of an unusual design for that XC1. And
now you're seeing too why they only have one bookshelf speaker, because this is the second one right here, and $800 a pair. I mean, is what
it would be. Yes.
Yeah, it makes sense here. XC2 is $600 each. Increases the driver sizes to 5.25 mid-range and 6-inch woofers on either end. Also has dual ports on the back, along with dual binding posts.
So same design, tweeter beside the mid-range driver. So I mean, clearly that's done to keep the height of it when it's a center speaker lying horizontally, is to keep the height down, right? You don't have to have the tweeter above the mid-range driver. Although, like, given the size of the 5.25-inch mid-range beside, and then, 2 6-inch woofers, a 6-inch woofer on either side, you just take that cabinet height. It's like, well, if you just used the smaller mid-range driver and put that below the tweeter, you could have one where it's tweeter above mid-range driver. I think the heights would actually work out. But in any case, they've gone for this design, the tweeter beside the mid-range driver when it's lying horizontally, as you would expect of a center speaker.
And the XC3 is $900 each, uses two 5.25 mid-range drivers mounted on either side of the folded ribbon tweeter, which is weird. And then there are 4 6-inch bass woofers, 2 on either side. Man, this thing must be long.
It is big. I think it's actually longer than the towers are tall. This is not one that you
gotta get that internal volume.
Yeah, this is not one you would turn vertically. That would be a very strange setup to turn the XC3 vertically. So I'm not sure that it's very important that you can rotate that tweeter 90 degrees. But yeah, this is more of a symmetrical looking design, right? The tweeter actually is in the very center of the XC3. Then it has a 5.25-inch driver on either side of that tweeter, and then 2 6-inch drivers on either side of that. 4
Reddit's going to have a problem with all of this. I'm going to be honest with you, because they love Emotiva over at Reddit. They love Emotiva, but they hate not having the tweeter above the mid-range.
They do indeed, yes.
So that is going to the mental gymnastics.
They're going to be worried about that horizontal dispersion just from looking at it.
They're going to really have hard problem with that. It's interesting design, and it makes me think that that this is not something that you would do if you were making a speaker and you were worried about how the internet was going to react to it. You would not make this speaker. I'll be honest with you. This is having an offset tweeter is not the way to go. It's going to throw people off. People are not going to wonder if they should move the speaker. The speaker should be off center now and all this. And while on this podcast we'll tell you it doesn't make any difference. You're not going to be able to move it over 3 inches. It's not going to
if you engineer it correctly. So tweeter and a waveguide, that helps with dispersion characteristics. Second, folded ribbon tweeters, historically very good at power handling. You can put more power and play it to a lower frequency than you might expect from a similarly physical faceplate size of the tweeter. There's a whole bunch more surface area thanks to it being a folded ribbon in behind there than you might expect. So that means you can set a lower crossover point between that tweeter and the mid-range driver. That was also going to help with your dispersion. And then as long as you put in a steep slope on the crossover between the tweeter and the mid-range driver, like steep slope on the top end of the mid-range and steep slope on the bottom end of that folded ribbon tweeter, as long as you do that, you're not going to have horizontal dispersion problems. Is Emotiva capable of knowing and designing their speaker that way? I don't know all the ins and outs of the specifications and exactly, but I bet you this has a lower than you might expect crossover point between the tweeter and the mid-range driver and steep filter slopes on the built-in crossovers. That would be my expectation because that is how you design this driver layout without having problems. So I think Emotiva is skilled enough to do that.
So this is, to me, I look at this speaker, or at least this particular speaker, these centers, and I think to myself, this is when the engineer, the designer, won the argument.
Right.
And convinced the marketing people, hey, this sounds good. I mean, this sounds good. You sit them down in the room and you're like, all right, so, and they did some sort of test that tricked them into thinking that the tweeter was in the center, and they're like, "Yeah, it sounds much better with the tweeter in the center." They just put the grill
on the front so you couldn't
They
see
took the grill off and went, "See, it's off center." Oh, well, okay, I guess you're right. And now that they have to sell this thing,
Yeah, because when you see
I
it
don't
with the grill
necessarily
off,
think it's a great idea. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think that this is something that's going to. I think that they're going to run into. They're creating more problems for themselves than they're solving, if that makes sense. Even if they just centered the tweeter on all these things, it would be better than.
Because visually, when you see them with the grill off, there is no question they are non-symmetrical. The XC1 and the XC2. The XC3 is symmetrical, but it's enormous. So that's immediately there are going to be people who are like, I just don't have physical space for a center speaker the size of the XC3. It is huge. But the XC1 and the XC2, like the pictures, they're right there on the website. They show it with the grill off, and it does not have that symmetrical look that many people are expecting of a center speaker. And there's that mid-range driver right beside the tweeter. It's not what people are expecting. People are going to wonder about it, but you put the grill on the front and now it's not a problem. The magnetically attached grill with no visible hardware, so it's all sleek and nice looking too. So there you go.
Yeah. So we'll see how it's received. We'll see. So if you're a game streamer, or you just want to capture game footage from your gaming PC or HDMI 2.1 console, which would be a PS5 or Xbox Series X, it's been a long wait for fully functional HDMI 2.1 capture cards because they don't like it. Do stuff like that. And if you want to capture or stream every HDMI 2.1 feature, you're still going to be waiting, but Elgato's new 4K-X, which is $230, and 4K Pro, which is $280, have just started shipping and come closest to providing the 4K 120 Hz or 144 Hz and HDR support that's been missing until now. 4K-X is an external USB capture card that can pass through 4K 120 Hertz HDR video signal to your display, but when it comes to capturing or streaming, there are some limitations. 4K at 120 will work, but only in SDR, not HDR. The pass-through to your own display can still be HDR. But what gets captured or streamed to your audience is only SDR. Internal tone mapping takes care of the conversion. Drop down to 440p or 1080p, and now you can capture or stream 120 Hz and HDR. Yes. And if you want to keep 4K resolution and HDR, you'll have to drop the frame rate down to 30 Hz. That's just the way.
That's the limitations of it. So you can't do 4K 120 HDR. You can sacrifice the HDR and keep the 4K and the 120, or you can sacrifice the 4K and keep the 120 and the HDR, or you can sacrifice the 120 and keep the 4K and the HDR. So you got to give up one out of the three.
Sounds like bandwidth limitations to me. 4K Pro is an internal capture card that plugs into one of your PC's PCIe slots. It can pass through 8K 60 HDR or 4K 144 HDR to your connected display. But once again, there are limitations on capturing and streaming. 4K with HDR can now be captured or streamed at 60 Hz, but not 120. Drop down to 1440p resolution. Now you can capture or stream at up to 144 Hz HDR. You also need the 4K Pro for VRR to work.
Variable refresh rate, yes.
These are officially licensed HDMI 2.1 devices, so copy protection is on board. Don't expect to be able to capture DRM protected Blu-rays or streaming video from your HDMI outputs with these, but for gamers, there's finally a solution for streaming something better than HDMI 2.0 quality to your audience. I guess it's exciting.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, we've been waiting on HDMI 2.1 has been around for a while. Capture cards have taken a long time, and even so, they aren't really everything that people were wanting them to be. I'm a little surprised that internal capture card, the 4K Pro, can't capture 4K 120 with HDR. That seems a little surprising to me, but in any case, the limitations are not too terrible. A lot of times when you're going to be streaming, you're probably going to lower the resolution anyway, just for internet bandwidth reasons. But as far as capturing, right, a lot of people want to be able to capture every last frame, every bit of resolution and HDR goodness and that, and there's still some limitations on that. But it's the best we've got so far. The prices are not ridiculous, right? Both under $300. So Elgato has some solutions for HDMI 2.1 video capture.
Comments. Infinite Gary, last week we discussed potential options for removing and disposing of a 100-inch flat panel when it reaches the end of its life. Gary recommends using 1-800-GOT-JUNK. They are nationwide, and as long as it is possible to do so in your area, they will recycle your old TV. Mm-hmm. They will send a 2-person team and provide full removal from inside your house. No need to uninstall and move the TV outside yourself.
So yeah,
how much does it cost?
well, it varies. It varies depending on how much they're having to remove and how much the job is and how long it takes and how much space it takes up in their truck. So yeah, there's a variable rate on the price. But I was just saying that, yeah, I mean, if you're talking about a 98-inch, 100-inch TV, maybe you have to rent a truck if you're taking it to your own recycle center, if they even accept that size. I was suggesting, retailers like Best Buy offer services where they will remove your old television when you buy a new one and pay for installation of the new one. They will take the old one away. And I was saying that might be the best solution in a place where you don't have a recycle center of your own, or it's very inconvenient for you to take it there yourself. But yeah, Gary, that's a good suggestion. Got Junk. They are all over the place, and they have that service. Then they're like, yeah, as long as it fits in the truck, they will take it. So there you go. Could be a solution. Thank you, Gary.
Jonathan in the CDEN 4.5. Last week we discussed the difference in the amount of delay between this DirecTV satellite TV broadcast and the DirecTV streaming version, which is about 25 seconds behind the satellite version. As a fellow football fan, we wondered aloud if Jonathan had really given the streaming experience a shot, and if that additional 25-second delay was truly unacceptable when following along with comments on X, or if Jonathan was just assuming that the additional delay would be too much to bear. Jonathan reports back that he's going to give the experiment a try since his satellite subscription lets him access the streaming version anyway, but there's a bit more to the situation. He's got a regular group of eight other Seattle Seahawks fans, and they aren't just following the games together on X, they're in an actual group chat. Furthermore, some of those guys regularly attend the games in person. They have figured out that cable TV and satellite feeds are already about 10 to 12 seconds behind real life. So adding another 25 seconds on top of that will mean being 35 to 40 seconds behind what his friends are posting in the group chat from the stadium, and that's just way too much of a delay. So as much as it would be nice to enjoy the cost savings of going streaming only, he's pretty sure that, for now at least, he'll have to keep those satellite TV boxes and pay the extra cost. Martin also wrote in on this topic to second Rob's suggestion last week to add an over-the-air antenna and ATSC tuner to Jonathan's setup if he really wants the least amount of delay possible. That is true.
But of course, that only works for games that are being broadcast on over-the-air channels, and these days games are showing up all over the place on various channels, some of them not available over the air. So yeah, that isn't a solution for all of them. It's a bit of a weird world that we're living in there, but okay, I get it. It's I can certainly understand being 40 seconds behind real life if someone's actually at the stadium and group chatting out what's going on there, and you're waiting almost a minute before you see it on your streaming version. That makes sense. So there you go. Sometimes you just have to make a sacrifice, and in this case, it's money. You have to sacrifice some money to have a little bit of less delay than what the streaming-only version gives you.
All right, questions here, finally. How long is the podcast? An hour and 10 minutes. Greg. First up, Greg's wife and son both heard Tom and Rob's comments when Greg wrote in with a comment that he corrected Rob about his misconceptions regarding the Samsung S89C QD OLED TV. Mm-hmm. His son thought the segment was hilarious, and he played it for his friends. I have no recollection of this. So
welcome, Greg's son's friends. Hello. You're probably never hearing this because this isn't hilarious and worthy.
Who knows? It could be hilarious. We haven't said it yet.
You said it directly to him. Yes. Hello.
Now to his questions. Greg found the Denon A1H flagship receiver for 30% off, which actually made $100 cheaper than the refurbished price, so he pounced.
Yes.
He's coming from an Arkham AVR20, which came with Dirac Live room correction, and he paid to upgrade it to Dirac Live bass control for multiple subs. His basement theater is not enclosed. There's open air pathways to basically his entire house, but he uses 3 monoprice monolith THX 15-inch subs, so he can still get satisfying bass output levels. Mm-hmm. He intends to sell his Arkham. Will the new owner be able to use the Dirac licenses that go with it? He can't transfer his Arkham Dirac licenses to his new Denon A1H, right? I don't know.
Indeed, I did have to look this up, and thankfully they make it pretty explicit and clear on their support website in terms of, can you transfer your license to a new device? That's right in there. And the answer is yes, you can transfer the license that you already have for your Arkham AVR20 to the new owner. They even say right there in the FAQ, you do need to contact their support via chat. You do have to open a support ticket. So, I mean, you kind of have to know to whom you are selling your AVR20 before you do this. I guess you could contact ahead of time and say, hey, I'm getting prepared, but until they know the like email address of the person that you're going to be transferring it to, you can't really complete that. But yes, it is possible. The second part of your question, you have the new Denon. It can also run Dirac. Could you take the license you already have for your RCam and transfer that to your Denon? No, that you cannot do. The license that you have for one piece of gear, it is tied to that one piece of gear. So if you have an Onkyo or a Pioneer or an Integra, then you have a Dirac license for that. The Dirac license that you purchased for that one sticks to that piece of gear, but you can transfer it to the new owner when you sell it. You just have to open a support ticket to do that. So yeah, I think that's pretty clear cut. That's exactly what they say on their site. So at least there's a way to do it. Unlike with Denon, when you get like the Audyssey Multi-Q X.
Yeah, the Multi-Q X is garbage.
The Multi-Q X
is so mad at that.
It's not only tied to that one like receiver model, just like how the Dirac license is tied to that one receiver model, it is also tied to a single owner and is not transferable. Those are the official rules, which is why there's the little workaround of if you do get Multi-QX for your Denon or Marantz receiver, create a new email address and that is the thing that you use to do all your registration, although they do require a phone number to go along with that too, so you might want to like do the create a phone number online thing that you can
the Google Voice.
Yeah, Google
line.
Voice.
Do they still have Google Voice?
There's still some way of creating a phone line, yeah. So you might want to do that. Make yourself a fake email address and phone number to go with your Multi-QX. So
I'll tell you what, I mean, you'll get a premium on your used receiver if you do that.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
Or just be prepared to give away your email address and phone number, which I don't think you're going to want to do.
Yeah. That's interesting.
But Dirac is easier. When you sell your device that you already had a Dirac license, you can transfer that Dirac license along with that AV receiver or pre-pro to the new owner. So that is nicer.
Yeah, I don't understand that Audyssey thing.
Yeah.
It's really irritating. So not so much a question here, but a tip for anyone else who might be looking for an equipment stand to go below your television. The Denon A1H is abnormally deep from front to back. I guess those 15 built-in amp channels had to go somewhere. He was looking forward to being able to fit all of his home theater gear inside his TV stand for once. The Arkham AVR20 can process 15 speaker channels, but only has 7 amps built in. He already has 2 large Sanders MagTech amps to power his Sanders ESL electrostatic front, left, and right speakers, which are cool looking, when he's using them as a 2-channel system. And the Arkham are required having even more external amplification, whereas the A1H does not. So those are cool looking speakers, but they sound good.
Yeah. They are some big, flat, stator electrostatic speakers, not completely dissimilar.
What is that thing on his... to the left of his center channel? What is that thing?
Is it some kind of VR headset?
It looks like a VR headset.
It looks like some kind of VR headset, but it's not one I'm familiar with. I'm not actually sure.
You have to look. You have to go to the AV. You have to go to the YouTube channel to find out, or the Flickr album, and then somebody can tell us. But finding a stand that could accommodate the A1H and the 2 large Sanders amps while providing enough ventilation, also raising his Martin Logan center speaker to the correct height below his 98-inch TCL TV was a bit of a challenge. Thankfully, the BDI corridor TV stand fits the bill perfectly. It's deep enough to hold the A1H and still have the doors closed in the front, and it has lots of ventilation on all sides of the cabinet, as well as excellent cable management built in, which is a tremendous help when dealing with so many speaker wires.
There's a lot of speaker wires for 15 speakers, all right.
It is. His tip for everyone is that BDI sells very few different SKUs.
A few. Not just.
I'm sorry.
I don't know where the very
few different SKUs. I just put that in
yes.
there. With the only difference being the height of the legs included in the package. He wanted the tallest legs, which would have been the 8179 SKU, but the 8173 version with the shortest legs was priced $600 cheaper.
Yeah.
So he thought of a trick. He called BDI's customer service and asked for replacement parts. He was able to get a replacement set of the tallest legs for $130. Jesus, $130 for legs?
That's still expensive, but it's not $600.
So that was a $470 cost savings over ordering the 8179 SKU instead. So I guess that's a tip.
There you go.
Saving money.
Yep. Most places do
It's like whenever I see it in advertisements, you can save $1,000. I'm like, if I can save $1,000, I can afford it in the first place. Like, if you can cut $1,000 off the price, it's too expensive for me.
Yeah, BDI is not inexpensive furniture, but it is very good. It is very good quality furniture. If you are going to have it and keep it a long time.
I guess just putting it on cinder blocks is not an option. Just getting dressing up some cinder blocks with some black felt. Something.
But yes, most reputable companies, they do have replacement parts. They have a replacement part service. So there you go. That was a good trick.
All right. So I guess we're on to more questions from him. He's actually looking forward to switching to Audyssey. He found messing around with Dirac to be quite the pain in the butt. You and even Andrew is now on that board.
Yep.
And the results weren't some huge step up from other competent room correction programs. He certainly didn't think it was worth spending that additional $800 to add it to his A1H. But since he gotten used to using Dirac and Dirac Live bass control, switching to Audyssey Multi-Q XT32 and either the Audyssey app or Multi-Q X is going to be a bit of adjustment. So he'd like to know how his bass management setup is going to change versus using Dirac Live room correction and Dirac Live bass control. Denon has 4 subwoofer outputs and can set individual volume and distance delay for each of them, correct?
Yes.
But it doesn't actually set individual EQs for each subs, does it?
It does not. It is a single equalization curve applied to all 4 of those subwoofer outputs if you're using 4. He'll be using 3. In his case, he has 3 monolith subs. And as we're going to discuss, you're probably not actually even going to use 3 physical pre-out connections from your Denon. I'm going to have you use 1.
Yeah. Sori owns a mini DSP 2x4 HD, 2 of them actually. Do those need to enter the equation, and what all is he in for here?
Right.
Well, now I couldn't understand why Rob was saying you would only use 1, and now I understand why. So you're going to take one output
from the Denon.
Tell your
one subwoofer pre-out.
You tell your Denon you have 1 subwoofer.
You're going to tell your Denon that you have 1 subwoofer, yes.
And then it's going to send that single subwoofer output to the mini DSPs, which will then send outputs. So you can EQ using the mic that you already own because you needed to for the Dirac.
Yeah, we know you've already used Dirac, so we know you have a USB microphone already. You'll keep that. You won't give that to the RCam owner. They'll have to get their own USB microphone. Yes. And then you will use Room EQ Wizard to do the stuff that you want to do Take some individual measurements of 1 sub at a time across multiple locations. So you're going to do multiple measurements for each sub individually. Yes. In Room EQ Wizard.
And then you will go ahead and apply, use the multi-sub optimizer.
The multi-sub optimizer software, which is free. Yes.
Free. On my favorite price.
Beat that price. It beats $800 all day long.
And then you will you'll do that.
Yeah.
You put that into the Dirac. The mini DSP. Which will apply that EQ to all 3 of your subs, and then you'll run Audyssey.
Yep.
And then Audyssey will take whatever output your 3 subs are doing, and then EQ that, which will probably be minimal, but it might be not minimal. It might be a couple of things, but it'll apply it evenly and just further fine-tune your bass output.
Yeah,
that'll be it.
The reason for doing things this way is that what you're attempting to do by individually measuring each subwoofer in multiple locations for each subwoofer, doing all of those measurements beforehand in Room EQ Wizard, and then importing all of that data, which is a pretty simple process. The instructions are right there in the multi-sub optimizer software program. It's not a complicated process. You actually end up just outputting all of those measurements as a text file, which you can do quite easily in Room EQ Wizard as an export process, and then you bring that into the multi-sub optimizer software. And one thing I really, really love, they've added a new feature to the multi-sub optimizer software, which is they basically give you 3 different targeting methods. What is it you're trying to achieve with the multi-sub optimizer software? And they now give you 3 different options. And they've added this 3rd option, which is take all those measurements. We have these individual measurements of each subwoofer, multiple location measurements of each sub. Take all of that data, crunch the numbers so that I get the most uniform response across the greatest number of seats without caring about the frequency response, right? There still might be ups and downs in the frequency response, but it's going to be the same ups and downs in all of the seating locations. Give me the most uniform response without worrying about trying to equalize it to a flat line or a, whatever target curve like that. Just give me uniformity, nothing else. That is the option I would recommend that you choose, because now when you go to run Audyssey, and that you are just going to follow the on-screen prompts. If you haven't used Audyssey in a while, it's a much simpler system to run through than Dirac is, especially when you are telling it, I only have one subwoofer. That's all I'm using from the Denon is a single subwoofer output. Now, when you move that Audyssey microphone around to your various locations, like if you're talking a 3-seater couch, it's going to be, the 3 seats and the 3-seater couch and some positions in between. And you take the 8 measurements that Audyssey lets you take, it is going to receive very uniform response from that single subwoofer output because you already did the uniformity ahead of time using your mini DSP 2x4 HD and the multi-sub optimizer software. And now Audyssey is going to be able to say, oh, regardless of where you put the microphone in these 8 measurements, I get really uniform response in the bass. I can EQ that all day long. And whatever target curve you draw for your bass response in the editor app or in Multi-Q X, it can be aggressive in applying its equalization to really closely match your desired target curve, because it isn't saying if I make this hump that I'm seeing in mic position 1, if I lower that, it ends up making mic positions 4 and 5 too quiet at that same frequency, because normally we have variation from seat to seat. No, multi-sub optimizer with your 3 subwoofers that you were going to physically spread around your space, it's going to do a really good job of getting very uniform response. And now it says, hey, I've got the same hump at the same frequency in all of those mic locations. I can be quite aggressive in taming that now and making it really closely match your target curve. So it's a few more steps, because when you had Dirac Live bass control, it was doing a very similar thing to the multi-sub optimizer, but just using the multiple subwoofer outputs of your RCam and doing that process. But you still had to measure in multiple locations. You still had to measure one subwoofer at a time. It's just that it did that process all as part of Dirac. So it's not really that dissimilar. It's just you're going to separate the steps. You're going to do the uniformity side of your multiple subwoofers first, and then you're going to run a very simple Audyssey that only thinks it's EQing a single subwoofer. And that's it. That's the whole thing. I think you'll like it.
Yeah. And it's going to be a lot cheaper. And I don't think you need to get the Multi-Q X, to be honest with you.
No, editor app will be fine.
But I think that the $20 app will be fine.
For what you're doing, that's great. All you need to be able to do is draw it. Honestly, if you're fine with the default target curve, you don't even necessarily need that. Yeah. You already own everything you would need, because you already own the mini DSP 2x4 HD. You already own the USB microphone for taking the measurements.
And then report back here how decidedly not worse this sounds than spending all that money on Dirac.
I think it's going to be better. There are limitations on what the RCam can do for individualized settings for the individual subwoofers versus what you can do with multi-sub optimizer and the mini DSP 2x4 HD. So I think you'll actually achieve better uniformity with your multiple subwoofers this way, and then Audyssey can go ham on EQing it because you've achieved great uniformity.
Yeah. David in Scotland. David has started using Amazon Music Unlimited to stream their available selection of Dolby Atmos music. He has a Yamaha RZ-A2A receiver and an Amazon Fire TV stick. God, I hate the naming conventions of these things. If he uses the Fire TV stick, it's a TV, but it's also a stick.
Well, it's not TV. It's a streaming stick.
I understand.
Amazon Fire TV
stick. Then why's the word TV in there?
Because it's television streaming.
Whatever. There's no problem. The tracks that are marked as being Atmos music playback in the Atmos format as expected. But if he uses the Amazon Music app that is built into his Yamaha receiver, all tracks only play in stereo, never in Dolby Atmos. Is there a setting that he needs to change, or is it not possible to listen to Dolby Atmos music tracks in Atmos via the receiver alone? And if not, why not? So, I don't know.
Okay.
I will tell you this, though, but especially Atmos music, for when this first was released, there was like only specific devices that you could use.
It was exceedingly limited when it first released.
Like, you had to have one of these stupid stick things in order to get the Atmos music.
Actually, when it first released, even the Fire TV sticks didn't support it.
Yeah. So it was just the Cube, right?
Nope.
The Cube one?
It was literally just the Echo Studio smart speaker. No other, like, even other Echo devices couldn't do it. It's only the Echo Studio could do it, and then you could do it through headphones, like Dolby Atmos headphone through your smartphone. That was the only other way.
Assuming that because a service has a capability that your specific device with its very specific app can do that thing is a fool's errand. You cannot make that assumption.
No, but I mean, who can blame any consumer for being like,
oh, absolutely
I have
not.
an AV receiver that clearly has Dolby Atmos. I have a subscription to Amazon Music Unlimited that promotes, we have a whole bunch of Atmos music. And here is an Amazon Music Unlimited app.
Print, my man. Fine print. You're going to finish answering this question.
Yes,
I need to go. I can hear something happening in the room. I need to figure it out.
So, the short answer is things on Amazon Music Unlimited have actually improved in terms of support for devices that can output a Atmos music signal. It now works in addition to the Amazon Echo Studio speaker. It works with Sony's premium smart speakers, their RA3000 and RA5000. So if you just want a single smart speaker solution that can play Atmos music from Amazon Music Unlimited, it is the Amazon Echo Studio and Sony's RA3000 or RA5000 smart speakers. Then you can also output a Dolby Atmos signal via an HDMI connection from a Fire TV Stick 4K, a Fire TV Stick 4K Max, or the 5th generation just Fire TV Stick, or from the Fire TV Cube streaming devices, the 2nd or 3rd generation, not the 1st generation. And it also works with the newest Google Chromecast with Google TV streaming devices. So all of those are a way to have an HDMI signal send out the Dolby Atmos signal from Amazon Music Unlimited. It also works with some select built-in Amazon Music Unlimited apps on certain smart TVs. But what is missing from that list is the built-in Amazon Music app on any AV receiver. I don't exactly know why that has never become a priority for any of the AV receiver companies or Amazon to work on that and get that support built in, but it just isn't present at the moment. You have to get one of those other separate devices. Thankfully, you already have one of them. You have apparently the 5th generation Amazon Fire TV Stick, or maybe it's a Fire TV Stick 4K that you have, but you have one of those devices. There is a way to do this. It just doesn't work with the built-in app on your Yamaha. So, I mean, that's purely just a app support thing. Somebody somewhere has not paid the money necessary to reprogram that and upload the newest version of the Amazon Music app on those. So that's all that's going on there. Okay, Tom is about to come back, but I'll start in on Julian because he's still sitting down. So first up for Julian, the last time he wrote to us, he was having an issue with a single pre-out channel on his Marantz SR8015 AV receiver. The signal from the front right speaker pre-out would drop out from time to time. It was just that one channel, none of the others. He tried to avoid it for a while, but he wound up doing a full factory reset on his SR8015. That process all by itself took about 30 minutes, and then of course he had to redo all of his settings from scratch, do a whole new Audyssey run, all of those things. So that's why he was trying to avoid it. A little bit of a hassle. But good news is, ever since he did that full factory reset, that problematic single pre-out channel seems to be working now. He hasn't had any issues since, touch wood. So that said, there is now a new firmware update showing up as being available for his SR8015. He's hesitant, understandably, to apply that update. He's just asking, what do we recommend? Should he just leave well enough alone? He isn't noticing any missing features that he wants that the firmware update might add. Should he just stay at the factory firmware after the factory reset in case the updated firmware was somehow responsible for that front right pre-out having its troubles? What do you say, Tom?
So what would I do, or what do I suggest he does?
Both.
So what would I do? It would drive me nuts not to have the update, and I would update because it would drive me crazy. And my thought process would be, well, if I factory reset and it fixed it, I could always factory reset again.
Yeah. Now you know what you're in for. You could do it again.
Yeah. That said, I would probably leave well enough alone.
I know.
Is my recommendation to you.
I know, right?
It's not what I would do, but that is my recommendation to you. And if you don't do that, I am okay with you not doing it.
I think I would probably suggest leave well enough alone. If you aren't having any troubles, leave it alone. If it starts having troubles at some point, do the update then. And see if an update fixes it at that point. There you go. That's what I'll settle on.
That's so he has a Parasound Halo A51 amplifier. If he gets somewhat close to any of his speakers that are being powered by that amp, he can hear a faint hum. It isn't high-pitched hiss. It's more of a steady hum at a low frequency. It isn't quite enough that it is quiet enough that he can't really hear it from his main listening position, so he's just been ignoring it. But now a new hum has started. This hum, which sounds very similar, is coming from the amp itself. And it is loud enough that he can hear it from his main listening position. That's not
good. He's not supposed to do that.
Sounds like something's going to explode. So he has filled out Parasound's service form and intends to send it in for repair. But is there anything got to check out or adjust himself before doing so? What might cause a hum like that to start happening when it wasn't there before? Something slowly exploding, I think, like a capacitor or something. I don't know what would create. Nothing good.
Yeah,
I'll put it to you that way. There can be no good that can come from an amplifier starting to hum that wasn't humming before.
Yeah.
So, or from an amplifier humming, period.
Yeah.
So, I would turn it off.
Unplug it at this point. Yeah.
I would not be using it anymore, honestly.
Until you get it repaired. And Parasound's a stand-up company. I'm certain they'll be able to repair this. Like we've been talking about with the one monoblock amplifier that one of our other listeners had, or in the case of the ATI that I had, that was producing a very noticeable hum from some speakers but not others. The chances that maybe this is something to do with a power supply that has become, somehow misaligned, it got dropped, it got moved, whatever it is, that seems the most likely. That's what it was in the case of my ATI. I also think that this ties into like a grounding issue, right? Normally there's plenty of noise in our electrical lines. Normally that gets shunted to ground. If something goes awry with the grounding of that connection, then that noise can't get shunted anymore, and it shows up as a hum or a hiss or something else audible in your system. So I think this is something to do with the power supply. That would be my pure guess, slightly educated guess based on the limited information that we have available to us. But I would absolutely just follow through on that support ticket with Parasound. I have no doubt they'll be able to get it fixed for you. But yeah, I would probably disconnect at this point. There's something not right with the power supply, would be my guess.
Yeah. Now for the fun part. Julian is in the planning stage of adding a large addition to his house. It's going to be a 36 by 40 foot garage and shop. And that footprint will also have a finished living space above it with 9-foot ceilings. The exact floor plan for the upper level has not been finalized yet, but one thing is for sure, his new dedicated home theater room, it will be going up there. So it's maybe the entire 36 by 40?
No, it's definitely not going to be the whole thing, but that is the totality of the footprint that we're working with. So obviously we can't recommend a theater that's larger than 36 by 40.
Okay. That won't be a problem.
No.
Because I'm not going to recommend that.
No, neither am I.
So he's trying to figure out the ideal dimensions. Again, the ceiling height is already decided at 9 feet, and the theater will not take up the entire 36 by 40 foot floor plan, but those are the maximum outside dimensions. He has always envisioned having 2 rows of seats with enough space for a 135-inch or larger projection screen. He intends to keep his existing home theater equipment in the new theater room. Well, that's going to limit you more than anything else. That means he will start by using a JVC NX5 projector, a Marantz SR8015 receiver, and a pair of SVS PB3000 subwoofers. Right. Well, doesn't limit you that
Not
much.
too limited. Not too limited at all. Yeah.
So what's the largest screen size we would recommend using a JVC NX5 projector that will allow HDR to still look like HDR? Well, 135 inches is like too big. I hate to say it.
It's like absolute max. I would even consider. And
but he didn't say HDR to like be functional a little bit. He says that HDR to still look like HDR, which means it needs to be significantly brighter than SDR.
Yeah, and
that's not 135 inches. It's smaller. I mean, if you look at like the ultra short throws and stuff, they're like 100 to 120 inches max. Like that is it. That's as big as it's going to get. So I would be going towards the 120 inches, and then I would figure out my seating distance for where I wanted to sit.
That's what he's
and then
asking
everything else
exactly.
from there.
Yeah. 120 is my like de facto answer on here. Like if you're just like, I got an NX5, I want HDR to look like HDR. I'm like 120 inches. That's my answer to you. Now, are there ways of stretching it to 135? You're going to have to put it in high lamp mode. There's absolutely no way you can avoid.
That means it's going to be making more noise for sure.
You would absolutely have to put it in high lamp mode at 135 inches. You would have to open the iris up all the way. You would have to pump up every output that it's got. And as that lamp dims over time, it's going to look a little bit less and a little bit less like HDR as that lamp ages. Like you are maxing it out at 135, whereas it's really quite comfortable at 120. And you've got a little bit of headroom to play with there as the lamp ages. So 120, I am confident saying that all day long. If you're just like, I have to have 135, could I do it? I'm like, you could. You'd be absolutely pushing your NX5 to its maximum when you do that. You really can't go larger. If you want HDR to look like HDR, you can go to 150 for SDR. You could go to 160 for SDR. That's about the max for that NX5 is like 160 inches for SDR, and you'd be okay with that. You'd again be pretty close to maxing it out to get that screen size at SDR. But for HDR, 120 is where I feel comfortable.
Okay.
Yeah.
Based on that largest recommended screen size, what we suggest is the ideal room dimensions, considering he wants 2 rows of seats. Again, and I can't really stress this enough. We can give you recommendations based on field of view, which is how we're going to do it.
Absolutely.
And field of view is extremely personal. I mean, there are lots of recommendations out there, and every single one of them could be wrong based on what you personally think is right. Yeah. So in order for us to properly answer those questions and give you like exact measurements, you would have to tell us, I know what field of view I want, and this is it. Sure. And then we could extrapolate. So Rob's going to give you stuff based on some different numbers. Some numbers. Yeah. And then you'll have to figure out what field of view you like. Well, what field of view? I don't know what field of view. Yes, you do. Go on your current screen, whatever it is, and just keep moving a chair until the field of view is like, this is how big a movie should feel.
That's right. And then you measure distance from eyes to screen versus width of the screen. And that's your field of view.
That's a field of view.
That's it. So, but I've got a few, just sort of rule of thumb recommendations here, both for sticking to what we think is the right size to aim for, which is 120 inches with your current projector, or you are willing to just stretch that projector to its max and go for the 135 that you had in your mind. I'll talk about both. Now, first is you are actually envisioning a larger field of view, like sitting more towards the middle to front half of the theater, right? You go to a movie theater and you sit either like right in the middle or towards the front half of the theater, and you're going for more like a 50 or slightly larger than 50-degree field of view in the front row. And then that gives you the ability to have a very comfortable 34-degree field of view in the back row, which is still like a little larger than most people are used to for television, right? 34 degree field of view, but that's like right in line with a lot of recommendations for movie viewing. So it gives you the choice of people who don't like to sit towards the front half of the theater. They can sit in the back row and have a really comfortable movie experience at 34 degree field of view. And then you want the bigger field of view, you can sit in the front row. So if you're going for the 120 inch screen, I would have from eyes to screen to the back row at about 14.5 feet. That's the back row. And then if you want to have a really comfortable distance from the back row to the front row, I would say that's 6 feet between. So you take that 14.5 feet and subtract 6 feet from that to give you your front row, or a minimum of 5.5 feet to the front row. So I'm talking like a minimum of 9 feet from the front row to the screen, and then 14.5 feet to the back row. That's for the 120-inch screen size. If you went for 135-inch screen size, then I would be very comfortable like 16 feet to the back row, and then 10 or 10.5 feet to the front row. And that's going to give you that. Now, if you're more thinking of, I want to be super comfortable in the front row of seats, and I want the somewhat standardized 45-degree field of view, which is like just behind the middle of a theater. If you go there, towards the rear third of the theater, and a 45-degree or 46-degree field of view in that front row. Now you're sitting ever so slightly more than 10 feet for the 120-inch screen to that front row, and then having the rear row 5.5 to 6 feet behind that, or 11.5 feet would work really nicely from a 135-inch screen to give you a 46-degree field of view in the front row. And then, of course, the back row is going to be closer to a 30 or 32-degree field of view, depending on if it's 5.5 or 6 feet behind the front row. So if we're talking on the small end of things, all right, so we sat with the 120, we went with the 120-inch screen and sat closer to it, 9 feet to the front row, and then we put the second row just 5.5 feet behind that, and then I'm going to want 4 feet behind that back row, because it's a dedicated theater, right? We end up with a room that's only 18.5 feet long. Not that large a theater. And then I'm thinking you probably want like a 4 seats across type of thing, and then a nice...
Well, what I was going to suggest is that if we tell him eyes to screen what the distance should be, then he figures out what couches he wants to have.
Right.
And then builds the room around the couches, if that makes sense.
A little bit, yeah. It is figuring out screen size and viewing distance. That's number one. Yeah. And so, but I'm just sort of estimating here, right? If we went with like 4 seats across plus walkways on either side, and that means that you can have your surround speakers without your surround speakers on the side walls, blaring directly into somebody's ears. So I'm being generous here because you've got the space to play with. I end up with the width of the room being 17 feet or so, 17 and a half feet, something like that in that range. So we're getting fairly close to square here, but something like 17 by 18 and a half on the small end could be quite comfortable. You can still have a two row of seats theater, and there's still 4 rows per seat, or 4 seats per row, rather. But that's with a 120-inch screen and sitting relatively close to it. If we went on the larger side of things, you went with the 135-inch screen. And I'm also going to say, what if we added a false wall into this equation? Because with 135-inch screen, maybe we do want that center speaker behind the screen instead of, closer to the ground below the screen. With a 120-inch screen, I really don't think you need to put the center behind the screen. You can put the center speaker directly below a 120-inch screen and it'll work just fine. You'll still have distance between the floor and the bottom of the center speaker. But if you go 135, we're getting into the territory where you might want to end up moving that center speaker behind an acoustically transparent screen. So let's say we got a 2-foot false wall. We're sitting 11.5 feet from eyes to screen. We're putting 6 feet between the 2 rows. Now I end up with a room that's 23 feet long. And then maybe you want to fit like 4 seats across with arms in between each seat, or you want a 5-seater couch going across, that type of thing. Yeah. If you got to an 18 or 19 foot width, so like 19 by 23 on the high end is actually really comfortable dimensions. Like that's a nice spacious theater, but it keeps the cubic footage of air still within reason, and it obviously fits within 36 by 40 as a total footprint. So 19 by 23 is super comfortable, but would almost sort of necessitate the larger screen size that your NX5 might struggle with. So if you went as compact as like 17 by 19, something like that, that's also very comfortable and works really nicely with the smaller 120-inch screen size. So I think that's in the ballpark.
So the one thing I want to warn you against as you're going through all this is you're going to run into recommendations either through articles or from people online that are going to talk about the ideal dimensions. Excuse me, my nose keeps getting plugged up here. Yeah. The ideal dimensions of your room. And they're going to talk about these golden ratios and all this other crap. I feel like a lot of that is really outdated at this point. Yes, room modes can be
as long as you have multiple subs, you can deal with it.
And you already do.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's less of a concern than it has ever been before because we now know how subwoofers work. I would much rather build a room based on the size of my couches or my rows and my my distance to screen than trying to follow some, golden ratio for sound modes as which will be changed significantly because we're going to recommend that you put room treatments in here. So, the things I would worry about were, first of all, distance to screen, for your field of view, the width of your couches, adding on to either side, because I say either side because I don't, either side, a row, an aisle that you can go down easily.
Here's my armrest.
But then also taking into it,
that's comfortable.
Well, and also taking into account room treatments that might be on the walls as well. So putting in another 6 inches onto either side of that row. So it's like if it's a 3 foot 3'6" aisle.
Sure.
On either side, just to make sure that you're comfortable with, I'm going to wall mount a speaker here.
Yep.
Now I don't have to worry about people hitting their heads.
That's right.
I want to put some room treatments here. I don't have to worry about them getting brushed as people walk by. I would do that and then not really worry about the rest of those dimensions. It's almost a box. Okay. We used to really care about that, and we still do to a certain extent. But if this is a dedicated room where you're going to be able to do whatever the heck you want, well, then don't worry. That's the last thing I worry about, because of all the other things that we can do to mitigate the sonic problems that happen because of the dimensions of the room. So yes, I just want to put that out there.
Agreed.
Do not trip and then fall into the hole of, but if my distance to screen is going to be this, then that puts the room at this one dimension of the room. It's that means the other dimensions have to be.
That's only if you're trying to play your speakers full range, and don't do that. Bass manage them, use multiple subs.
Yeah. So his Marantz SR 8015 tops out 13 speakers and 2 subs. Any reason to think that a 7.2.6 configuration won't be enough?
That is enough.
That is.
You're good.
You have a 5.2.6. You can 5.2.4.
You could.
Fine, I think.
Yep.
Don't listen to me, because I'm going to say less is more. Will his dual PB 3000 subs be sufficient?
So even if you went for the larger size that I suggested, 19 by 23 by 9, because we know it's going to be the 9-foot ceilings, that is just under 4,000 cubic feet. And with a pair of PB 3000s, you're singing. You're fine. So I think you're in good shape.
Yeah. Jim asks, what's our stance on using SlickDeals to find sale prices on home theater equipment? He recently found a Denon X3800H for $900 and a pair of DefTech Demand D15 tower speakers for $500 a pair on that website. My only question is manufacturer rebate. Warranties is the only question I would have. As long as the warranties are in place, knock yourself out.
Yeah, because SlickDeals doesn't sell anything themselves. They just have affiliate links that go out to other websites that are running these deals. My recommendation just on a psychological level of things is that if you have a product in mind, go ahead and search for that specific product on SlickDeals, and if you come across something great and the affiliate link goes out to an authorized retailer and not some fly-by-night third-party retailer that won't have the warranty on it, so just do a double check on that. If all of that lines up, then by all means, save yourself a couple $100 and go ahead and do that. SlickDeals these days, they have a lot of promoted things. What shows up on their front page is often paid for, or it's showing up by the time you click on it, that deal isn't available anymore. So it's just perusing it on a daily basis for deals, I don't think is really that useful. And worrying that you missed out on a sale, which is the entire way that their business runs, is entirely on FOMO, I don't think is super healthy for you. So it's not something where I'm going to be like, everybody just go to SlickDeals every day and see if you can spot a deal. I don't really like that approach just on a personal and psychological level, but I have no problem with going, here's the product I want. Let me just quickly put that into a search in SlickDeals and see if there happens to be a deal going, because if there is, great, and that's the way I would use it.
All right. Daniel says, what do we suggest for a budget acoustically transparent motorized roll down projection screen?
That's several features.
He's got one in the 120 inch to 130 inch. He needs one, in the 120 to 130 inch screen size range. He's putting his projection screen in front of a closet. The door's removed. He still needs to be able to access the closet space, hence the need for the roll-up screen. And he wants to put his front speakers within the closet area. This must be a big closet.
I don't know. He did say it's 2 sets of double doors, so it's pretty wide.
Okay. Hence the need for the screen to be acoustically transparent. He'd love to come in well under $1,000. Yeah? I'd like to get a free car because my car's messed up. It's not going to happen. And his own searches turned up a 120-inch option from Vivid Storm for a white perforated screen with a tensioned motorized design for around $600, or 125-inch option from Elite Screens for their Acoustic Pro UHD material and the non-tension motorized design for about $750. He has used a motorized screen before, but not acoustically transparent, so he wasn't sure if there are special considerations that he needs to be aware of. Is having the tensioned design important? Are there a certain acoustically transparent screen materials that to either favor or avoid? What would be our top recommendations? for performance versus price. I would be this. I have never heard of Vivid Storm before. That doesn't mean that they're not good. It just means I haven't heard of them. I would be extremely concerned about that price, $600 for tension, motorized, and acoustically transparent.
And I'm not the biggest fan of going perforated. When you absolutely need it, there's no other way to get acoustically transparent other than perforated, then okay, it's a sort of solution, but perforated screens do mess with the frequency response of the speakers that you have positioned behind them. I'm a bigger fan of going for a woven acoustically transparent screen, which is what Elite Screen's Acoustic Pro UHD is. It's a nice woven screen. However, when it comes to a roll-down acoustically transparent woven screen, I tend to want it to be tensioned. If it isn't tensioned, it's difficult to work with an acoustically transparent screen that isn't tensioned. So I'm looking for all of those things. So if this is really, really, really what you want to do, I would maybe forgo the motorization, because you could go manual pull down if you only need to occasionally access into that closet area. I don't see why manual pull down isn't an option versus motorized.
But tension is the most important part to me for for drop screens.
And manual pull down tensioned is a little bit rare. You're right about that. Yeah. To answer the question of what do I normally point people towards, and I don't think, I'm just going to mention them quickly because I don't think it's what he wants. Seymour AV, they're my number one choice. It is motorized, it is tensioned, it is excellent acoustically transparent woven screen material. You're looking at $2,500 for the 120-inch diagonal screen size from them. Elite Screens, they do have tensioned with the Acoustic Pro UHD, a motorized roll down. That is their Saker tab tension screen. Now, directly from Elite, their price is $2,800. You can definitely find it for less than that because that's the direct MSRP, and you do find Elite screens at lower prices all over the place, but it's still going to be over $2,000. So you're in the $2,000 to $2,500 range for the ones I like most. I also think it's important in a case like this where there's a closet space behind the screen that you do have the black backing on there. This is going to be a case where you'd want to have a black backing, and Seymour always has a black backing, and the Saker tab tension does have a black backing as well. So we're up into that price range, which I don't think is what we know it's double what you were aiming for. You wanted to keep it under $1,000, so I'm thinking we sacrifice a feature here, right? Either I don't know. Does this need to be acoustically transparent? Because 120-inch screen size, you can put the center below the screen, you can put the front, left, and right speakers to either side of the screen, and we forget about acoustically transparent, and all of a sudden you just have a roll-down regular white screen, which is easy to find under $1,000.
Under $1,000, yeah. It's the acoustically transparent part that's the problem.
It is.
And without the tab without the tensioning, you end up with a screen that moves. That's just all there is to it. Any air movement in the room, AC blowing, heat blowing, acoustically transparent.
And now the woven screen isn't as taut as it really needs to be truly acoustically transparent, and the light scatter that goes through that screen is all uneven, and it's just, if it's going to be acoustically transparent, I want it to be tensioned, really, without question. Yeah. And I want the black backing in this case. So I think the solution here is don't worry so much about the acoustically transparent. You can put the speakers around the screen and go with a roll down white screen, and it can be cheap as chips.
I agree. But there may be a reason why that's not possible. How are we doing on time here?
I'm hoping we can get a couple more. I'm trying to race.
Brandon, after our discussion last week about replacing his in-wall golden ear speakers, which came with metal grills, Brandon thinks that Rob and Lee are probably right about his best solution being to physically move the location of his surround speakers rather than trying to leave them in a location where other people in his household frequently lean against the grills. Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
I missed that. But yes. As it turns out, he actually moved his seats forward from where they were originally, so moving the location of his surround speakers makes even more sense. He doesn't particularly enjoy doing drywall patches, but he's perfectly capable, and he does agree that it makes sense it makes the most sense in this case. Yes. That said, do metal grills on in-wall speakers negatively affect the sound quality, or is it just a uniform across-the-board attenuation of the sound coming out, or do metal grills affect some frequencies more than others, making fabric grills covers the better option, sonically speaking? There is no reason why a grill has to affect the sound. Yes, I know that there's other websites out there who are like, oh, grills, attenuate the high end, however much.
Sure, even fabric grills, speaker grill cloth.
Yeah, even fabric grills do. I've never experienced in all my listening tests audible difference between grills on, grills off. And I have, believe me, tested it with multiple speakers, multiple types of tweeters, everything. Okay. This whole idea that grills make a sonic difference is, to me, BS.
Right.
The only time it has ever made a difference that I remember was years ago. I want to say it was Monster Audio that came out with some speakers that had these like it was like
bars, right? It was more like bars.
But it was string. It was like these, it wasn't string, but it looked like string. I think it was metal, but it was like pulled taut. And this grill, and they looked cool, right?
Sure.
It looked like guitar strings put right next to each other across this thing. And what was happening is the speakers would play, and then they would start to vibrate, and it made a sound, just like a guitar string. So I don't remember if it was the vinyl, or if it was metal, or if it was string, or whatever it was. That was the only time when people were like, "Dude, seriously, take the grills off of these things,
right?
Because it's making a weird sound." I would not worry one way or the other about.
I mean, I suppose it's possible. You could tell visually pretty easily, because if you see a metal grill that has a bad ratio of solid to holes, then you could envision that literally physically blocking some of the higher frequency sound waves versus others. But yeah, if it's pretty easy to see through and the ratio of holes to solid is good, then no, it shouldn't have any impact at all.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest problem I would have with metal grills is they're often touted as being paintable, which they are technically paintable, but then you change theoretically the diameter of the holes, and you often do clog them up.
It's pretty easy to do. Yep.
So you end up sitting there with, I painted them, but now I have to go through with a toothpick or a pick and just poke each one out, which sort of very quickly gets old, and people give up and they just put them back on there anyways, the way they are, which will affect the sound. So that's the only thing I would really worry about. So he asked, what's up with RBH these days? Are they just no longer a value option? He is personally not a fan of their new website design, the fact that it seems impossible to find any official prices. Do we happen to know how much their SI760R in-wall models cost? And are there web-shaped speakers that their web-shaped speakers that includes the folded ribbon tweeters? So RBH has always been a company that has struggled getting out of the 1950s when it comes to how they sell their speakers. They are a very small company that makes very high-end speakers that do not cost very high-end prices.
And it is new ownership now from who it was before, yeah.
Right. So they have struggled to get away from the dealership model. And when dealers have complained about them going online with their EMP Tech brand that they had for a while, they shuttered that whole operation because the dealers were upset with them for doing what they considered to be an end around to try to get to sell directly to consumers, even though it was a different product and a different finish and a different name and a different everything. They looked enough similar that the dealers complained, and that was the end of that.
Yeah,
at least that's my understanding of what happened. And some of that's a little bit of assumption because I knew some of these people. I don't know who's in charge over there now.
Yeah, it's all pretty much higher end now. That's what they're targeting. They're definitely targeting the top end of the price range now.
So, I don't really feel like they're a value option. They wanted to be. They kind of moved in that direction, and then they immediately got cold feet and backed away. So, yes.
But yeah, the SI760R, I mean, this is a little bit of sleuthing. I don't have the exact price that you're actually going to be able to go out and buy it for, but in general, it's around $1,400 to $1,500 each for those SI760R, the reference version with the folded ribbon tweeter and the phase plug drivers in there, that's just the speaker itself, then they really are intended to be used with that fully sealed rear enclosure, which is a separate $1,000. So they're basically $2,500 each speakers. That's what you amount to. And then the wedge-shaped ones with the folded ribbon tweeter, that's the 61A SWR. Those go for $1,300 each. That's the price on those. So they are pricey speakers. These are not inexpensive speakers at all.
All right. So he reached out to Aperion after Rob suggested it was at least worth a try, asking if they might be able to offer custom grill and finish options. Brendan says the response he got seemed less than interested in entertaining his request, but perhaps he was just in contact with the wrong person, and it wasn't an outright no. So we think it's worth putting more time and effort into seeing if you can get the white grills and white cabinet finish on their web-shaped speakers from the Theatris series. Honestly, my man, I just don't think it's that hard to refinish, to take white speaker grill cloth or a similar fabric and just recover.
Well, that's just like if you're now okay because you are physically moving the surround speakers with going with the cloth grills, then you can absolutely use the frame that comes with that. I'll admit they only offer it in a black speaker grill cloth finish, but you can take that frame and recover that, which is something he already said he was comfortable doing. Recover that with white speaker grill cloth, and now that solves
it's just
it.
like hot glue and you know what I mean, and pull it taut and a couple staples.
That's right.
Maybe.
So I think that's the easier solution there. I'll also put this out there. This is going to continue this conversation undoubtedly, but I'll put this out there because the whole thing is that he's actually trying to find an in-wall speaker solution that better matches his Ascend Acoustics front speakers. And Ascend Acoustics doesn't make in-walls. That isn't something that they do. But Ascend Acoustics does make like their whole Luna series that is very much meant to go on wall, but those can be recessed into a wall, like they're either a sealed or a front slot ported design. They are not an in-wall speaker. They don't come with like the dog legs to attach them, behind drywall. But if you are like, he sounds quite handy. He sounds quite DIY and handy in the things that he do. If you're willing to basically just construct a recessed shelf to hold the Luna speakers, they can absolutely be like recessed into the wall. They just don't have the regular in-wall dog leg type of connection on that. And of course, there's the depth of the speaker at 6 inches to consider. So if you're just talking about, in between a regular 2x4 stud wall at 3.5 inches depth, it's, some part of the face of that speaker is going to have to be jutting out and proud of the front of the wall, which isn't really the worst thing to have anyway. But I'm thinking you might actually go with a solution from Ascend themselves, because it isn't that you can't recess their Luna speakers into the wall. It's just that they're not an in-wall speaker. So you'd have to do a little bit more DIY construction yourself. But I mean, that'll give you the very best timbre match you can possibly have with your Raul Ribbon tweeters up at front, because you'll have Raul Ribbon tweeters in your Luna speakers to install those as surrounds. And if you need custom finish options, you can absolutely get custom finish options from Ascend. So that is a possibility. You just talk to Dave or talk to Dina over there at Ascend, and you can absolutely get custom finish options from them. There's an upcharge for custom finish, but they can absolutely do that.
I kind of feel like this is a solution that, I don't know, this is more working on a solution for a problem that isn't that big of a problem to begin with. If you're at all handy, just make a little column and just put a on-wall speaker in it. Yeah. I mean, just some stick
because the Lunas work great for that. They are meant to be mounted on the wall. There's no reason they can't be recessed into a column or into the wall.
Is he worried about people bumping into it? Is that the thing?
Well, originally he was, because originally he had one right at a walkway where people were like literally leaning on the speaker when they come down into the room. And that was an original thing. But if you're going to be moving it anyway, doing a drywall patch anyway, then...
It won't lean on it if it's on the wall and they see it there. And they,
right.
I mean, I don't know. All right, so you all know how some guys have a room in their house that they call their man cave? Well, his wife has a chalet. She still wanted the TV in there, so Brendan put their Vizio TV, a V405 G9 model. No, that one.
40-incher, yes.
Along with the Yamaha ATS 1080 soundbar, his wife insisted the system had to be dead simple to use, but she did want better audio quality than TV's built-in speakers. Turns out this is the one system in their house that does not work reliably. Quite often, the TV just defaults to playing audio from its built-in speakers. The soundbar powers on, but doesn't actually play anything. Brandon can go in there, manually turn off the TV speakers, and toggle the digital audio output, and then it works. But this is supposed to be dead simple to use. So any ideas of getting this to work? Is there maybe a better, more reliable soundbar he could put in there instead? How is this thing connected? Is the question.
I'm pretty sure it's optical, because that Yamaha is optical only.
Usually when you turn off this TV speakers, it sticks. It doesn't.
Right.
It doesn't turn them back on.
Yeah.
So this seems like a TV issue more than a soundbar issue, to be honest with
the
you.
setting in there, I certainly have noticed on quite a few TVs, if you happen to have a USB stick stuck in there as a source just for like photos or videos of your own that you're playing off a USB stick, I don't know why, but a bunch of TVs, if you have a USB stick stuck in your TV, it like forgets its audio settings, and I have no idea why those two things should be connected to each other whatsoever. But like you're not even necessarily activating that USB stick; it's just having it plugged in. On my Samsung TV, makes it forget its audio settings all the time. Just can't handle it as long as there's a USB stick stuck in there. So I'll throw that out there as a maybe. Do you have a Vizio with a USB stick stuck in there? Take that out of there, and that might solve the problem. But I mean, as crazy as it sounds, I actually think in this setup, which is supposed to be as easy to use as possible, HDMI ARC with HDMI CEC might be your friend in this scenario, because this isn't a setup where you got a bunch of different sources plugged in. This is the scenario where it's like, yeah, you just have the one remote, the SoundBars remote actually, and that's the thing that turns everything on and controls everything via HDMI CEC. So Vizio's soundbar, my favorite one to recommend, is on sale right now. It's that M512-H6, which is such a memorable number, just like all the other ones we talked about. But that is Vizio connected to Vizio. You can connect it via HDMI ARC. You can connect it with HDMI CEC, and it's down to $400 these days. If you have no need for either the subwoofer or the wireless rear speakers that come with it, you don't have to use them. You can just use the 3-channel soundbar up front if that's all you want, or then you can connect the wireless subwoofer and or the wireless surround speakers to it to have a full 5.1 surround sound setup with that. So for the price, I like that Vizio M512-H6, and $400 on sale at Best Buy right now. And it's Best Buy, so if it doesn't work, you can return it.
I think you need some TV. Jeff, after our previous advice on which projector to get, Jeff waited for a sale and pounced on the Epson 5050 UB when it came available, or affordable, I should say. He will be mounting it on his ceiling, and he's noticed a huge variety of available projector ceiling mounts at all different kinds of price points. Can we get him pointed in the right direction? Which ceiling mount would we recommend for his new Epson 5050 UB? Chief? It's expensive, but good.
I mean, it's very good, but I don't think you need to pay quite that much. I like the one from Peerless.
Peerless, that's okay.
Yeah,
I was trying not to look at your notes here. Yeah, but anything with like. So the thing about adjusting a projector that is ceiling mounted, your ceiling mount, is you're like, well, I can get a cheap one because I'm only going to do it once, and once it's done, it'll be done. And if it's hard to do the first time, well, I'm only doing it once anyway, so it's not a big deal. Let me just tell you something, my man. You're not doing it just once, okay? And if you get a cheap one, you're not going to be doing it just once for sure, because it's going to come out of adjustment, and your image is not going to be straight, and your image is not. But guess what? You're also, after you do it the first time and you've got it set up perfectly, you're going to realize you didn't really have it set up as perfectly as you thought you did. So, I just had to adjust my projector just the other day because I realized as I was watching something that it was slightly cutting off the bottom of the image. I mean, it looked fine when I set it up, but now it's cutting off the bottom of the image slightly. So you want one that has fine adjustments, like those worm screws, the
little
screw
worm
adjustments.
gears with the little knobs that you can turn, and there's a little worm gear inside, and it gives you very, very fine adjustment of your tilt and your pitch and your roll, and that is exactly what you want. So yeah, I like the Peerless ones, the PRGS. It gives you all those controls. $170. So it is absolutely not the least expensive. It is absolutely not the most expensive. The Epson 5050 UB is a very nice projector. I can absolutely justify that price point. That said, I like recommending getting them from B&H Photo because they, for whatever reason, tend to have the best price on Peerless when you're just ordering online. And like I say, that's $170. There actually is another one from a different brand called Gabor or Gabor, or I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce it. Gabor is the brand name, but they have a very similar mount for a little bit less, $50 less, in fact, for $120. Still a universal mount with the worm gear adjustments, just like that. The Gabor one is also available in a white finish, and it did look like it has a white ceiling, so that might be another reason. So price still has the features, $120 available in a white finish. So yeah, I'll have the links for those in the show notes from B&H Photo.
So he's very comfortable doing electrical work himself. You sort of say how we recommend plugging any projector into a battery backup. Could we explain how we recommend running a power line extension from the projector's position on the ceiling to the location where the battery backup will be kept? Do you just install 2 regular outlets with standard house wiring running between them and then use a male-to-male power cable to go from the newly installed outlet to a battery backup? So Rob's going to link you up here to there's a bunch of solutions for this that are out there, but the way to do it is there's a normal outlet that is by your projector.
Yeah, so somewhere close on the ceiling, normal, regular, female 15 amp outlet up there.
You plug into that.
Yes.
Okay.
The projector goes into that. Yes.
Then the Robex goes from there down to behind your AV receiver or your gear or wherever that stuff is, where your battery backup. And then instead of a regular outlet on the wall, it looks like the where you plug the power cable into
you put a male inlet instead of the regular female outlet.
Right.
Now, I mean, what you suggested, just a regular female outlet on both ends, and then you actually get a male-to-male cable to go between the battery backup and the female outlet down by the gear that you installed. That could function, but generally we like to suggest installing the male inlet down by there, just so that you don't have the situation where somebody accidentally plugs something in to that female outlet, which is only connected to the other female outlet up by your projector. If you have the male inlet, then it's very obvious that this is a different thing. And now you can use just any regular extension cord that goes between the male inlet and your battery backup. So that's very easy to find. And the male inlet is not crazy. It's like $25. You can order it on Amazon. So yeah, it's a very simple thing. If you're already comfortable with electrical, this is nothing. So you're going to have the male inlet down by your gear, that you're going to run some Romex from that male inlet to a regular female outlet on the ceiling by your projector, and that's it.
Yeah, and the one that Rob linked up is just ugly as hell. I'm sure you can find a better looking one.
That's just the first one that comes up on Amazon.
Yeah. So in his basement, he wanted to slap together an inexpensive on-wall 3.1 sound system to complement a wall-mounted TV. He already owns a pair of Klipsch RS-35 speakers. They are bipole speakers with a trapezoidal shape meant to act as surround, but since he already owns them and they'd be easy to wall mount, could they work as front, left, and right speakers on the front wall? Yeah.
They could.
They'll play sound.
Yeah, I mean, bipole speakers aren't really the worst thing. They're just like exceedingly wide dispersion speakers. Yeah. So functionally,
it's going to sound very mono. You're not going to see a lot of it. Basically, it's going to sound very mono.
Yeah, just because they're the weird trapezoidal shape doesn't mean you cannot use them as front, left, and right. I wouldn't want to use dipole surround speakers, the ones where the two tweeters are facing in different directions and out of phase with each other. That I would not want to use as front, left, and right speakers. But bipole, where the two tweeters facing in different directions are firing in phase with each other, it's not really a problem. They're just like a really wide dispersion speakers, so that would functionally be okay.
Yeah. Sorry, I was doing something. Where did I?
Just below the picture here.
Okay, yeah, that threw me off there. If he uses those Klipsch surround speakers as front, left, and right, what could he add as an on-wall center? Ideally, like to keep the cost of the on-wall center to around $200 or less. I wouldn't add a thing.
That is certainly an option. Yes.
Why would you? Those two speakers are going to be overlapping so much as far as their dispersion. You're going to have a huge sweet spot for the phantom center, and they're going to be close enough to each other and close enough to the screen that it's not going to make a huge amount of difference.
Right.
There's no world in which I would add a center speaker here. basically.
I agree with that. I think that is the right call. This means we're asking you to buy nothing, and you're just using all existing equipment, and we think it's going to be perfectly fine for the purposes that you have talked about. Just to answer the question as wrote, Klipsch does have on-wall speakers in their reference Premier series. The RP140D is the smallest of it. It's a single 3.5-inch driver with a little horn-loaded tweeter in there. It is drastically overpriced at $230 in my opinion, but it is somewhat reasonably close to the price that you talked about, and it absolutely is an on-wall design that'll work just fine along with your other two Klipsch speakers. It's going to sound different from the bipoles, so I'm not sure that you're getting a very nice timbre match from left to center to right if anything is panning across. I agree with Tom, don't even bother with it, but it does exist. It is an option if you absolutely have to try it. There is the larger version, the RP240D, which has two of the 3.5-inch woofers, one on either side of the tweeter. That gets priced at $350, which is utterly insane for that tiny little thing. But those exist. Don't get them. Just run it in stereo.
So is there some other left, center, right on-wall solution for under $400 that could work along with this DevTech sub and Pioneer Elite receiver to make a nice, tidy 3.1 setup? Do I know what this DevTech sub is? Has he said this already?
No, we don't know the model number. I don't know what it is. It's just it's what he's got on hand. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, what are you looking to achieve in this? Because it sounds to me like what you're looking to achieve is sound. Like
better than the TV's built-in speakers.
Better
clearly.
than the TV. Yeah. Louder. I don't even think it's better. Louder than the TV itself. If you're looking to go for that, just don't half measure it. And everything you're talking about is a half measure. Mm-hmm. So if you're gonna half measure it, like go just as half as you can,
which is using what you already own.
Put the DevTech and the Pioneer Elite and these two surround speakers and be done.
Sure.
Because once you start saying, well, I'm going to get these on-wall speakers, they're not really big enough for this room, but I'm not really looking for that much anyway, so I might as well just get these cheap ones and blah, blah, blah. And then you're going to get them up there and go, ugh, they're not really that great. We know they're not that great. They were never going to be that great. So therefore, now you're like, oh, well, they don't really blend to the sub, and the sub's not really that. I should probably get them. No. If you're going to do it, do it. Mm-hmm. If you're not going to do it, literally don't do it.
Right.
Just use what you have. I would not do anything. Please, just 2.1 or maybe 2.0.
2.1 could work in here. Yeah, and you haven't spent a thing. You're just keeping what you have now. But again, just to answer the question as wrote, is there a 3-speaker solution, easy to wall mount, under $400? Yeah, there's Monoprice's Monolith MOW3, which is basically 3 of their OW1 on-wall speakers all in one long cabinet. So on the back of this thing, there are 3 sets of separate binding posts. It is 3 separate speakers in one long cabinet.
Oh, right. I remember this thing.
Yeah, and they're selling it for $323 right now. So it technically, what you asked for, checks all the boxes, just keyhole mounts for mounting this thing. Do bear in mind, though, the woofers in here are 4.5-inch woofers. It is almost 7 inches tall from top to bottom. So this is not a inconspicuous visual thing being mounted below your television. But if you're just like, yeah, I want a on-wall mountable 3 speakers, this looks like a chunky sound bar, basically, but it is a passive speaker bar, 3 sets of binding posts. It is regular speakers just sharing one big long cabinet. Yeah. So that is an option for the price point that you talked about, and pretty decent sound on that thing too. So I'm not like against recommending it. It's a solution for something like this.
All right, let's do Ryan. And that's
really?
The last question, and we'll just get it done. Yeah. Ryan has put bass traps in the corners of his room and panels on the first reflection points, but when he does a clap test, he notices a bad slap echo that is still happening, and this definitely seems to be coming from his ceiling, which is currently untreated. He has no problem with mounting panels on his ceiling, but his issue is that the ceiling height is already a bit lower than usual at 7 foot 4 inches. He wouldn't mind putting 3-inch thick panels up there, but Jesus. But anytime he has seen ceiling panels, they're always hanging down and have fairly big air gap above them. Is that absolutely necessary? If he just secured 3-inch thick insulation directly against the ceiling with some L brackets, would that be okay? Yes. I mean, it's overkill, and you're paying more for the insulation than you have to. You could get 2 inches of insulation with 1 inch of air gap and get similar, if not slightly better performance. I see.
But a slightly more complicated hanging thing, so there's that to consider too.
So let me put it to you this way. So you're going to make if you get the panels, you're going to make a frame to hold the panel.
Yeah.
Or the panel itself is going to have a frame.
Yeah.
Okay. You could still do your same design that you're talking about, but build the air gap into the design.
Sure.
So instead of putting 3 inches of insulation in there, put 2 inches of it, or 1.5 inches of insulation in there. And then have the air gap be behind it, and then you're L-bracketing the frame.
Performance-wise, ideally, the air gap would be no more than 1/4 of the total thickness of the panel. So that would be like 3 inches of insulation with a 1-inch air gap performs the same as 4 inches of insulation with no air gap. Once the air gap starts getting larger than 1/4 of the entire depth of the panel, you start getting some wiggles in the response of the absorption that's going on there.
You could still, if you want to have something that's hanging 3 inches down, you can do that.
Yeah.
And then build the air gap into it to save yourself money on the cost of materials.
And weight as well, right? It's going to weigh a little bit less if the insulation isn't quite as thick.
L brackets anyway is the thing.
Yeah. So some L brackets up there. Those are 3 inches below the ceiling. 2 inches of insulation. You'll be totally fine, basically.
Yeah. So we visited a luxury high-end speaker store. They had Revel Tower demo set up with a couple of $20,000 monoblock amps. This was supposedly an $80,000 stereo setup. You couldn't help notice the huge glass window taking up pretty much the entire front wall behind the speakers, and there wasn't a single room treatment in sight. Nothing.
Yeah.
This is not shocking.
I am not shocked.
This is my not shocked
I believe him when he says that.
The Revel towers were pushed into the corners, basically right up against the glass, and we suggested to the salesperson that maybe the speaker should be pulled out away from the wall, and maybe the room should be acoustically treated. The guy looked him straight in the eye and said, yeah, people think about the room too much. The room really isn't that big of a deal. Ryan had to stifle a laugh. He honestly didn't think the system sounded any better than what he has at home. Which is probably true because most people's systems at home are crap, so it doesn't matter what they hear at the high-end place, it's going to be better. But let's go on. They also insisted on only demoing music with a single instrument or voice, nothing complex. And that's fine, whatever.
Yeah.
We've joked about this sort of attitude in high-end audio, but now that he's experienced it firsthand himself, why is this the norm? Why wouldn't they, when they want these expensive products to actually sound as good as they are able in a fancy store demo? You're not the audience.
Yeah, they're not selling sound. That's not what they're selling.
It's not what it is.
When you get up into this price range, into, over, well, yeah, actually, his very next question is about this, but I mean, yeah, you get them to this close to $100,000 for a pair of speakers and some amplification. Like, they're not selling sound. They're selling status. That is the only thing you're selling when you get to this price point.
And how are you going to sell an $80,000 or whatever it was? I forgot the prices already. $80,000 set of speakers, and then also say, but the room makes a big difference, so make sure your room is good.
Right.
If I'm paying $80,000 for something, it better be good all by itself.
Sure.
I better be able to put it in a closet.
That's right.
Made of,
put it into my marble bathroom, and it ought to sound great, right?
It ought to sound great no matter what, because it is an $80,000 product. They're not selling speakers.
Nah.
They're selling a lot of stuff in there, but none of it's speakers. And they're not selling, like Rob said, they're not selling sound.
Nope.
So he says, where do we draw the line in terms of price for just a 2-channel music listening system where we feel as though spending more doesn't benefit the sound in any way? So we've talked about price and speakers on this podcast a lot, and kind of $2,000 for a tower pair-ish, $1,000 for bookshelves kind of is where, like, that's the sweet spot where spending, tower speakers can go up a little bit more than that, maybe $3,000, where you're getting that just about as good as sonically it's going to get before you start, like, seriously rolling off with your price to performance ratio.
Like I've talked about for a certain period in the low price ranges, the more that you're paying, what you're hoping to get is more sound. You're hoping to get
Yes.
full extension up to 20 kilohertz, which doesn't always happen at the very low price ranges where there's tends to be rolled off high levels. And then you're definitely paying to get all the way down to 20 hertz because there's a certain amount of money you need to spend on a subwoofer and hopefully a pair of subwoofers to really get you linear response right down to 20 hertz. That you can't do that at, like $100 subwoofer. It just, nobody can actually do that. And of course, it depends on your room size as well in terms of how much output you need from those subwoofers. So you're spending more and more money to get more and more sound. Then you round a corner, particularly in the speakers, not so much in the subwoofers, where you start to pay a little bit more money to actually get a little bit less sound. And what I'm talking about there is faster transient response, so less sound in the time domain where the speaker isn't continuing to produce some sound that the signal didn't actually ask for anymore, just from inertia, just from the movement of the driver. It's still continuing to move even though the signal said to stop. And you're paying a little bit more money to get that faster transient response. You're paying a little bit more money to lower the distortion of the speaker in all the various ways that a speaker can distort, whether that's some cabinet resonance or whether that's just some intermodulation distortion between the drivers. Like, you're paying a little bit more money to reduce all forms of distortion, including temporal distortion, including transient domain distortion. But then you reach a point where maybe there actually are still measurable differences to be had, but we've just reached the limits of what your ears and your brain can detect anymore. And there really isn't much point going beyond that, just in terms of sheer performance from the speakers themselves. Then,
that's from a measurement standpoint,
Sure.
really. And you can make a speaker that sounds that fits all those parameters Rob just described, but can only hit a very low output before it starts to distort.
Right.
So that speaker might be good for sitting in front of a computer and having these speakers be right there next to you.
Yep.
Within
or
arm's
you've
reach.
set up a little spare bedroom or a little spare den, and that's your 2-channel listening room, and it really doesn't have to play very loud to be satisfying.
Right. So what you end up. So in answer this question, where do we draw the lines in terms of price? Well, you can't. Technically.
Well, because it's room dependent and listening distance dependent, yes.
Yeah, once you start getting it like, oh, well, I've had those speakers and they sound like crap. Well, where'd you have them? I had them in this massive open concept
this
room.
Huge, great room.
And I was sitting 25 feet away from them.
Yeah.
Well, of course they sounded like crap. You were sitting 25 feet away from them. Very few speakers can sound good at 25 feet away that are consumer level.
Right.
You know what I mean? That you buy specifically at like Best Buy or something. You go to Best Buy, buy their highest end speaker, you put 25 feet away from you in a open concept reflective room, they're going to sound like crap.
Like if I'm sitting 25 feet away, could I get to some stereo speakers that are up in the $5,000-$6,000 for a pair range? I absolutely could, because in order to have speakers that can play that loud without distorting and still deliver very good frequency response at a listening distance of that size, that has to be
and
engineered
cross over into a subwoofer.
Yeah, that's right.
Convincingly,
and
with
the
space.
subwoofers are going to have to be more expensive, because to deal with this huge amount of air volume, I'm going to require, if I want to have linear response down to 20 hertz, I'm going to need some big beefy subs. So absolutely, the price point can go up at that point. But you'll notice we're talking about definitely speakers that are under $10,000 for a pair, right? Like,
it's very hard for us.
There's really not much need to go beyond. And I mean, it's really hard to get to even that.
It
Definitely is. Speakers that cost in the $3,000 per pair range, if we're talking about a 12-foot listening distance or around there, 10 to 15 feet, which is relatively typical, it's pretty hard to need to go beyond $3,000 a pair for speakers that are really delivering anything. For subwoofers, if we're talking about an enclosed room, right? Let's say a fairly nice sized enclosed room, 3,500 cubic feet or something like that, right? But we're talking about subwoofers in like the, PB2000 Pro range from SVS, or monoliths like 12-inch or maybe 15-inch subwoofers or something like that. So again, we're talking for a pair of those, maybe around $3,000-ish, right? So we could get to speakers and subwoofers, just those two things, in the sort of $6,000 range pretty easily. And then as long as you have some competent amplification at these types of listening distance that we're talking about, again, we don't have to go to gigantic amplifiers. Yeah, if we want really nice room correction to go along with that, maybe we're into a $1,500 amplifier, AV receiver, something like that. So could I get to a $7,500 2-channel system in a fairly typical listening room? Yeah, absolutely I could. Then I'd want to add some money on that for acoustic treatments as well. So, but the whole thing definitely under $10,000, no question.
Yeah. Okay, that's a number. So he's got his equipment rack positioned at the back of his room, and he pre-ran speaker wire inside the walls, routing that in-wall speaker wire resulted in the runs from the equipment rack to his front three speakers being around 55 feet long. At the time, he just had a big spool of 14-gauge speaker wire, so that's what he used, but he's seen some of the charts for recommended speaker wire gauge, and most say that 50 feet or longer, he should have used 12-gauge. Some say 10. So, if he were to rerun his in-wall speaker wires using the thicker gauge, would he notice any actual difference in the sound?
No.
Not a chance.
There's
zero chance would you notice. Okay, not only are what they're saying probably just plain wrong as far as whatever they're saying, but I think that the small amount of high-frequency attenuation you might...
Right.
you might experience will be immediately sorted out by your room correction. Like,
oh sure,
the second that your room correction notices that the high end that you can't hear anyways because your hearing's not that good, that is slightly attenuated by the speaker wire run.
Right.
The little bit that is going to be like, boop, EQ that up a little bit, done. So yeah, I don't see there being any real reason to ever worry about this. If you told me you ran 16 or 18 gauge, I'd be like, don't worry about it.
16 gauge, I wouldn't worry about. 16 gauge. Yeah, if you got really, really started getting thin, even then, the chances of you actually hearing it is really... Because, I mean, we're talking about where those recommendations came from is they're specifically just looking at the resistance of the wire, right? So we're talking same pure copper wire in either case, but one of them is just thicker than the other. So you can just calculate what the resistance is going to be. And then you say at the absolute maximum of human hearing on the high end at 20,000 hertz, what is the minimum change in speaker wire resistance that would be necessary for there to be any possibility of detecting a difference at 20,000 hertz? And it's like, okay, at about 75 feet at 12 gauge versus 14 gauge, there's an outside chance that there's like a 0.1 decibel decrease. And I'm like, yeah, you can't hear that. I'm sorry, you can't hear it.
Right.
We're talking 20,000 hertz. What is even playing up there that could possibly be important enough that you're going to notice a 0.1 decibel difference? Like, it just doesn't matter. Like, I would be happy running 12 gauge speaker wire to like 200 feet, 14 gauge speaker wire, yeah, like 100 feet, totally fine. You're never going to hear the difference.
Yeah, I think in my art, is it my article? Did I write this or Clint? Oh, I wrote this.
Yeah.
I think it says
14 gauge, 80 feet. There you
14
go.
gauge, 80
From the
feet.
calculation.
From the calculations.
This wasn't an experiment where you kept increasing the length of the speaker wire until you actually reliably heard in a double blind comparison.
Oh, no.
That was purely from calculation. And even that's like 80 feet, 14 gauge, like calculating it, you're not going to know.
That's, yeah, if you're just looking at like the mathematical,
yes,
like, can it make a change? It's 80 feet.
There you go. And that is 14 gauge. They were calculating 14 gauge in the article on AV Gadgets, so not 12 gauge. So 55 feet, you're easily under that. I promise you. If you made the change and did a blind comparison, I know I went
not
from
a chance.
14 to
0.000%
chance that you're going to reliably detect that difference.
Well, you may hear a difference.
That's what I mean. If you knew about it. Yes.
But you wouldn't.
I mean, I bet if you installed new banana plugs on your existing wire and you knew about it, you'd swear there's a difference if you wanted to believe such things.
I'll tell you what. Yeah. Go get some $80,000 Revel speakers. You're going to definitely hear a difference. Hear a difference in your wallet. All right. So that's it, Rob. We got no more questions for next week.
That's right. Left on the list.
So I guess we're done.
We should be. We've gone 2.5 hours here. Good grief.
Thank our listeners of the week. We want to thank Jeffrey for going to avrant.com, clicking on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link, and sending us a PayPal donation, and our 131 patrons over at patreon.com, including Daniel. Thank you, guys.
Yes, Jeffrey, thank you so much for the PayPal donation. Really do appreciate that. And patreon.com/AVRant podcast. If you'd like to sign up to make an automatic monthly donation. So big thanks to our 131 patrons over there. Daniel, thank you for being one of them.
Thank Michael for talking us up to GIC, and Aaron, you are we receive your thanks for us testing out Canadian movie codes.
That's what it is. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Aaron.
I thank Greg and Jeff for giving me permission to use their photos on AV Gadgets.
Thanks, Greg and Jeff.
And we got some notes of gratitude from Michael, Aaron, David, Julian, Jeff, and Ryan. Thank you for thanking us.
I'll say the names one more time. Michael, Aaron, David, Julian, Jeff, and Ryan. Thank you for your notes of gratitude and encouragement. They are certainly appreciated. And a big, big thank you to everybody who continues to listen and send in your questions.
All right, for AVRant, I'm Tom Andry.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AV Rant.
Now go out and listen to something.